Chapter 22-21. Wordless Heavenly Book, Grand Play of the Heavens and Earth. Empress Feyue calmed her thoughts and summoned an ancient book. She inserted wisps of the power of rules into it. Some time later, the ancient book began to flip on its own, producing a series of rustling noises. Wisps of mystical light burst out of the book and formed a watery curtain. Various scenes began to switch between the curtain, which eventually formed a certain image. On a boundless plain, a mountain range covered in white mist rose from the ground. It was like an ancient dragon lying there, giving off an unshakable feeling, as if it was incomparably heavy. Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, Miexiang, and the rest of the authorities were standing in front of the mountain range. In addition to Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler and the rest of the authorities were emitting tremendous glows too. Their ancient artifacts floated in the air and were fully activated as they fired terrifying blows at the mountain range. Judging from the situation, the Pearl Spirit must be in deep slumber deep inside the mountain range. Qin Nan's eyes soon flickered with astonishment. He discovered that the mountain range seemed to have merged with the boundless land. It did not budge even when the 5 rulers of Tao were attacking it. At that moment, Eternal Night Heavenly Venerate's body suddenly emitted a black light and a terrifying aura. Even though Qin Nan and Empress Feyue were quite a distance away, they could still sense the aura of a Heaven Highness. Following it, Eternal Night Heaven Highness took out a copper bow. He pulled the bowstring and slowly drew it back. Every inch he drew the bowstring, a formidable force of the rules of darkness gathered on it. In the end, it turned into a pitch-black arrow. Qin Nan was startled. Even though they were separated by a screen, they could still feel a shocking sense of oppression. Whoosh! As the bowstring was released, the arrow fired. The image immediately fell into darkness. Qin Nan lifted his gaze and saw that the rift around them had darkened significantly. The situation lasted for more than 100 breaths before the darkness in the image slowly dissipated. Qin Nan immediately glanced forward and saw the entire mountain range covered in black. In the middle of the mountain range was a huge pit with a length of over 100 zhang and a depth of over 100 zhang. On top of it, the color of the mountain range gradually darkened. The power of the rules of darkness that belonged to Eternal Night Heaven Highness was corroding the mountain range like venomous snakes. The attacks of a Heaven Highness are nothing to be scoffed at, Qin Nan exclaimed in his heart. However, at that instant, a brilliant sacred glow burst out from deep within the mountain range and shattered the black glow at lightning speed. The sacred glow dissipated too. Qin Nan's eyes were filled with astonishment. He did not expect the Eternal Night Heaven Highness would only leave a small hole in the mountain range after executing such a powerful attack. The mountain range was enormous. Even if Eternal Night Heaven Highness was constantly attacking, it would still take him at least a year to shatter it into pieces. This mountain range is most likely built with the primary force of the 32nd small immortal realm. Besides, the world we're in now is built by the Pearl Spirit, thus it is able to gather the strongest forces and immortal intents of the world inside the mountain range. Therefore, it would be difficult for anyone to break through the mountain range with brute force. It would take them a lot of time. Empress Feyue said, "The ancient taboo is aware of this, which is why it gave us the Pearl of the Heaven Emperor." Qin Nan frowned as he collected his thoughts. If that was the case, the situation would become quite troublesome. They were still unsure if the reincarnations of the 3 burial generals were related to Huang Yun Ruler and the other rulers of Tao, or the place where the Pearl Spirit was sleeping. As a matter of fact, it was fairly easy to figure it out. Qin Nan just needed to go to Huang Yun Ruler and the others and observe the reactions of the 3 ancient swords. However, they currently had Eternal Night Heaven Highness with them. If he showed up, Eternal Night Heaven Highness would surely target him. Most importantly, there was less than a month left until Tsangji's reincarnation showed up. If they could not kill or refine the Pearl Spirit before then, they would not be able to leave the mountain range. The situation was going to be quite troublesome. What should we do now? Qin Nan was having a headache. He had to come up with a solution that would satisfy both sides. Qin Nan, the situation isn't as complicated as you think. Empress Feiyue's blue eyes seemed to be able to read his mind. She said calmly, Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun ruler, and the others are planning to break through the mountain range and target Sangji's reincarnation. Even if they aren't interested in Sangji's reincarnation, if they still fail to claim the Pearl Spirit after Sangji's reincarnation shows up, there's no telling what's going to happen next. On this point, we are of the same mind. Qin Nan nodded. Empress Feiyue added, If I'm not mistaken, Eternal Night Heaven Highness and Huang Yun ruler will gather all the rulers of Dao to break through the mountain range. However, it's within the ancient taboo's expectation. Judging from how powerful the mountain range is, even if all the rulers of Dao are here, it still won't be enough in a month. However, we do have an advantage, the 3 ancient swords. Qin Nan was startled by the words. What could the 3 ancient swords do? I believe the reincarnation of the 3 burial generals isn't Huang Yun ruler and the others, but the place where the Pearl Spirit is sleeping. If that's the case, we can take a gamble. Empress Feiyue said. What kind of gamble? Qin Nan was even more confused. Give me the 3 ancient swords, and you will know when the time comes. Empress Feiyue did not explain further. Give them to you? You want to go there alone? But... Qin Nan paused in the middle of the sentence. Judging from the situation, Empress Feiyue was indeed the only one who could go there alone. If he showed up, Eternal Night Heaven Highness and the rest of the authorities would simply abandon the Pearl Spirit and suppress him first. Not to mention that the rulers of the various factions would be here soon. He would have nowhere to run to. He would not be able to deal with them. Copper Mirror, I'll leave them to you then. Qin Nan took a deep breath. He took out the 3 ancient swords and handed them to Empress Feiyue. He said, Be careful. Leave if anything goes wrong. Empress Feiyue received the ancient swords and activated the wordless heaven scripture. It encapsulated Qin Nan and concealed his presence. She did not speak. It was her personality. Many people would remind her to leave when she was in danger, just like Qin Nan. However, she never cared. She vanished into thin air with a flicker. Chapter 22:22. Meanwhile, somewhere close to the mountain, Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun ruler, and Mie Xiang wore displeased looks. They already knew the place where the Pearl Spirit was sleeping was not easy to enter, yet they did not expect it to be this powerful. They had prepared a lot of measures beforehand, but they were no longer useful now. Lord Sky Sovereign, in my opinion, why don't we use some method to inform the other rulers of where the Pearl Spirit is sleeping? Huang Yun ruler transmitted his voice after bowing. Sure. Eternal Night Heaven Highness said calmly. He knew it was their only option under the circumstances. It would take them at least half a year to find the Pearl Spirit. It would be meaningless for them to break into the mountain by then. Royal Cloud ruler nodded at Destruction Face ruler, who immediately performed a hand seal. Countless blue rays of light shot out from his hands and turned into thousands of little beasts that flew in all directions. Eternal Night Heaven Highness flung his sleeve. Countless pitch-black birds appeared out of nowhere and flew in all directions at a shocking pace. Although it was impossible to use the voice transmission token in this place, for experts at their level, it was extremely easy for them to send a message to the experts in other places. It was as easy as blowing off dust. Keep going. Eternal Night Heaven Highness said. He drew the ancient bow once again. He suddenly paused halfway. His eyes flickered with disdain as he said, Are you trying to hide when I'm here? Following his words, a blue ripple appeared in the rift, followed by Empress Feiyue's figure. Empress Feiyue. Huang Yun ruler and Mie Xiang's eyes sharpened. They already knew Empress Feiyue had severely injured ruler Duan Mu. It's you. Eternal Night Heaven Highness's eyes flickered coldly. He never had a good impression of Empress Feiyue, not to mention how close she was to Qin Nan. You're quite daring. Could it be that you've already forgotten that I'm very interested in your technique of 10 lifetimes? Now that you've shown yourself here, could it be that you think you can defeat me after becoming a sovereign? A cold smile appeared on the corner of Eternal Night Heavenly Sovereign's mouth. A formless aura rose within his body. One had to know that the difference between a celestial sovereign and a sovereign was like the difference between heaven and earth. Even in the ancient era, very few sovereigns could contend against a celestial sovereign. That being said, Eternal Night Heaven Highness was well aware that Empress Feiyue was no ordinary ruler of Tao. However, he had achieved the peak Heaven Highness realm too. He was only a step away from becoming a supreme Empyrean. No matter how strong Empress Feiyue was, there was no way she would stand a chance against him. The hearts of Huang Yun Hegemon and Annihilation Hegemon stirred. Should he team up with Eternal Night Heaven Highness to take down Empress Feiyue? Empress Feiyue had invented the art of 10 lifetimes, and Qin Nan was very fond of her. If he could convince her. Qin Nan's heart sank. The copper mirror was in a bad spot. He did not expect Eternal Night Heaven Highness to have such a strong opinion of Empress Feiyue. They aren't the reincarnations of the 3 burial generals. Empress Feiyue transmitted her voice to Qin Nan before she said, "Eternal Night, I'm no match against you with my current cultivation." She spoke calmly, as if she was not too bothered by it. If that's the case, it seems like the strongest immortal is aware of your own strength. If that's the case, what gave you the confidence to show yourself here? Eternal Night Heaven Highness was infuriated by her attitude. Because of his emotions, the void within hundreds of thousands of miles turned dark and oppressive. The Heaven Highness flame was about to erupt. Empress Feiyue's faint blue eyes remained calm. She said coldly, "If you aren't an idiot, you won't harm me." After saying this, she summoned an ancient sword and stood with it in hand. "Won't harm you? Just because we're going to destroy the mountain range together? Aren't you overestimating yourself? Even if you aren't here." Before Empyrean Eternal Night finished speaking, he abruptly stopped, his pupils constricting. In addition to him, Huang Yun Ruler and the others reacted the same way too. This was because they could clearly sense that the sword was shining with a halo, as well as a formless wave of energy that was moving towards the place where the Pearl Spirit was sleeping. That sword. Could it be Heavenly Highness Wu Wang's natal artifact, the Tianshu sword? Eternal Night Heaven Highness's eyes flickered with astonishment when he noticed something. Heavenly Highness Wu Wang's natal artifact? Huang Yun Ruler and the authorities were startled too. They immediately realized the significance of the sword. "Qin Nan, this little girl is quite bold." Zhou Xuandao couldn't help but exclaim in admiration. "Senior, what do you mean?" Qin Nan asked immediately. He was still confused. "It's very simple. The little girl is betting that the reincarnations of the 3 burial generals are in the place where the Pearl Spirit is sleeping. If she's wrong, and the reincarnations of the 3 burial generals are actually the people of the Wang clan or the other 3 rulers of Tao, Empress Feiyue will be surrounded by Eternal Heaven Highness and the others. However, if she's right, it's a different story." Eternal Night Heaven Highness and the others immediately realized that Heavenly Highness Wu Wang's reincarnation is in the place where the Pearl Spirit is sleeping, and it has yet to awaken. If they were to attack at the same time and unleash the full potential of the sword, what would it do to the mountain? Zhou Xuandao said. Celestial Lord Thoughtful's reincarnation would instinctively want to retrieve the supreme treasure of the past. This mountain range was created by the Pearl Spirit, so when it was attacked by its own people, its defensive power. Qin Nan's eyes flickered with astonishment as he came to a realization. If that was the case, Eternal Night Heaven Highness and the others would not attack Empress Feiyue in order to break through the mountain in advance. If the Tianshu sword was able to produce an unexpected effect on the mountain, it would be able to break through the mountain in advance and refine it or kill the Pearl Spirit in advance. Empress Feiyue had only used one of the swords to hide the other two as a backup plan. That being said, Qin Nan soon realized the risks involved. If Empress Feiyue made the wrong bet, or if the Tianshu sword was unable to produce an unexpected effect on the mountain, she would be in great danger. Empress Feiyue said calmly, "I won't waste any more time. If the sword is really useful, you all should lend me your strength." After saying this, she directly slashed out with her sword. The resplendent sword light was like a crescent moon as it rushed towards the mountain range. Chapter 22-23. Bang! Only to hear a loud bang, a sword mark appeared not far from the large pit left behind by Eternal Knight Empyrean previously. The sword mark was over 90 zhang long and 30 zhang deep. It was nothing special compared to the enormous mountain range. It would not even be noticeable on normal days. However, the sword mark was extremely eye-catching in the eyes of Eternal Knight Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, and the rest of the authorities. It felt like the sword mark had expanded countless times. Eternal Knight Heaven Highness had used an ancient Tao-seeking weapon to execute a peerless attack, yet he only managed to leave a huge pit on the mountain range. However, the damage that Empress Feiyue had inflicted on the mountain range was only slightly weaker than Eternal Knight Heaven Highness's attack. In addition to it, they also saw the Tianshu sword in Empress Feiyue's hand emitting a crisp chime as it vibrated vigorously, as if it could not wait to break through the mountain range and return to its rightful owner. Even Eternal Knight Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, and the rest of the authorities were startled. If Empress Feiyue did as she said, they would be able to break through the mountain range at a much faster pace if they were to focus all their energy on Empress Feiyue. On top of that, there was a great chance that they would arrive before Zhangji's reincarnation. Heaven Highness Wu Wang's reincarnation is about to show up in the mountain range. The eyes of Eternal Knight Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, and the rest of the authorities flickered passionately. If they could obtain Heaven Highness Wu Wang's memories, it would be a great opportunity too. It was comparable to refining the orb spirit. As expected of Empress Feiyue, you even managed to find Heaven Highness Wu Wang's natal artifact. I'm utterly impressed. Huang Yun Ruler's eyes flickered with astonishment. Hee, not bad indeed. Eternal Knight Heaven Highness said with a fake smile. Even though the strongest cultivator of the primary upper realm was displeased, he still knew how to change his attitude. Are you still planning to attack me? Empress Feiyue turned around and looked into his eyes. Why would I? Eternal Knight Heaven Highness's eyes flickered coldly, yet he maintained the smile on his face. Make your move. It's best if you don't have any other intentions. Empress Feiyue withdrew her gaze and unleashed wisps of the glow of 10 lifetimes. The sword in her hand buzzed too. Eternal Knight Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, and the rest of the authorities performed a hand seal and flicked their fingers. Wisps of formidable power of rules poured into Empress Feiyue. Empress Feiyue immediately executed an ancient art to insert the force of rules into the Tianshu sword. The sword began to emit an unbelievable glow and an ancient aura as if it had been unsealed from the ancient era. Whoosh! Another sword slashed out. That sharp sword light seemed to have illuminated the entire world. The power produced when it hit the mountain range was many times more tyrannical than before. Copper Mirror, we can only rely on you now. Qin Nan took a light breath. After observing for a few breaths, he slowly closed his eyes to feel the mysteries of this new power in his body. His current power was still too weak. He had to grab hold of any opportunity to improve himself. Time gradually passed. Around 3 days later, Li Pasheng of the Li clan, Zheng Di of the Zheng clan, Master Dark Owl, and the rest of the rulers of Tao had made their way here in advance thanks to Eternal Knight Heaven Highness and the others. Some of them were even peak masters of Tao. After learning about the situation and seeing the cold gazes of Eternal Knight Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, and the others, they immediately inserted the power of rules into Empress Feiyue's body. Each of Empress Feiyue's moves was utterly terrifying, like an ancient heaven highness had returned to the world. Of course, Empyrean Evernight, Huangyun Hegemon, and the others had tacitly chosen to keep the heavenly pivot sword a secret. Li Pasheng and the other heavyweights were still in the dark about it. Time gradually passed. 22 days later, more than half of the enormous mountain range had been forcefully sliced apart by the endless and terrifying sword Qi. Almost all the experts present could feel an indescribable chaotic aura surging in the last bit of the mountain range. Judging from the time, there are only 2 days left until Zhangji's reincarnation shows up. I wonder if Empress Feiyue will be able to slay the last part of the mountain in 2 days' time. Judging from the current progress, she will need at least 5 days. That should be enough. The authorities of various factions must have gathered in the 32nd small immortal realm. Once Zhangji's reincarnation shows up, there will be a great battle. I'm afraid it will take at least 4 days for the outcome to show up. We still have a chance to take part in it. The experts transmitted their thoughts to one another. Qin Nan, who had been immersed in his cultivation, opened his eyes and prepared himself for the upcoming battle. Meanwhile, the 32nd small immortal realm, over the past few days, the small immortal realm had undergone shocking changes. Almost all the fortunate encounters they had accumulated over the years had shown up. Every rift was filled with rare phenomena and immortal intents. In addition to it, the authorities of various factions had used all kinds of ancient Dao weapons to travel across the rift and arrive in the north, south, east, and west realms. If a cultivator in the Master Realm stood at the center of the 32nd small immortal realm and looked in all directions, he would see terrifying auras surging in the sky. Ancient ships over 100,000 zhang long emitted brilliant glows as they slowly showed up. A few of the ships had a figure standing on them. They were none other than Progenitor Mingqiu, Progenitor Ling Huang, and Ruler Qingyu. Progenitor Shuangdao was sitting in a room. The people of the Sky Taihuang sect are here. The other Heaven Highness clans and formidable factions immediately looked in the direction of the Sky Taihuang sect. The eyes of some of the rulers of Dao flickered coldly. What a grand occasion! Moxie, Demon Emperor Wutian, and the demonic figures lifted their heads in a secluded spot. Demon Emperor Wutian exclaimed when he saw the scene. Moxie, let me be frank, if my master is assimilated by Zhou Di, don't blame me for falling out with you. Chapter 22-24. Emosie suddenly noticed something after finishing the sentence. He said, "Everyone, it's starting." The demonic figures immediately unleashed their terrifying divine sense upon hearing the words. They scanned the place with their divine sense. They soon noticed wisps of white mist rising from the mountains over 10,000 zhang tall in the east, south, west, and north realms. It felt like some ancient formation was slowly being activated. The rulers of Dao from various factions noticed it too. They immediately used their eye techniques to observe it. The white mist continued to spread in all directions. A day later, the white mist covering the mountains had spread over 10,000 li. Many rulers of Dao raised their brows. Even with their current cultivation, they were actually unable to see through how the white mist was formed. "Look!" a peak master of Dao blurted out all of a sudden. The experts and rulers of Dao nearby immediately lifted their gaze and saw the edge of the west realm turning blood-red. An enormous moon with a vertical pupil slowly rose into the sky out of nowhere. Every time it rose a foot higher, a vast invisible force would sweep across the land like a peerless tide. The rare phenomenon is happening. Many people's hearts were shaken. Meanwhile, in the world that the Orb of Heaven Emperor had constructed, Qin Nan, be prepared. Empress Feiyue transmitted her voice. Qin Nan's eyes sharpened. The new power in his body was ready to burst out at any second. He had been approaching the mountain range secretly with the help of the wordless heavenly scripture. He was not too far away from the mountain range. Everyone, there's only a little left in the mountain range. Please lend us more power to break through the mountain range before Tsangji's reincarnation shows up, Empress Feiyue said calmly. Got it. Eternal Knight Heaven Highness was the first to respond. He immediately unleashed the power of the rules of darkness. The other authorities did not reject the request. Empress Feiyue's icy blue eyes immediately emitted a golden glow. Her figure turned into a few afterimages as she disappeared into the distance. An incomparably majestic fluctuation spread out in all directions. This seems to be the void connection sword technique created by Celestial Venerable Lien Su? I didn't expect this Empress Feiyue to be hiding it. Eternal Knight Heavenly Sovereign revealed a strange look in his eyes, and he was slightly happy in his heart. In this way, they would be able to advance by at least one day. Dubhe, 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 dubhe. At that instant, Empress Feiyue summoned the other two ancient swords and activated them simultaneously. The three ancient swords buzzed and emitted a brilliant golden glow, which soared into the clouds and slashed at the remaining mountain range at lightning speed. Boom! A deafening sound rang out. The last bit of restriction suddenly shattered and turned into countless specks of light. Eternal Knight Heaven Highness, Huangyun Ruler, and the authorities of the Master Realm were startled. Shua! At that instant Qin Nan's aura skyrocketed. He turned into a peerless ray of light and headed straight for the place of slumber. Roar! Dragon roars rang out from the three ancient swords as they automatically erupted with a powerful sword intent. The slumbering sword spirits within were also about to awaken. However, wisps of the force of 10 lifetimes kept suppressing them like ancient mountains, preventing them from flying out on their own. Empress Feiyue, Qin Nan, and Zhou Xuandao glanced at the swords simultaneously. Is that, in addition to Qin Nan and Zhou Xuandao, even Empress Feiyue's golden blue eyes widened after taking a glance at it. Countless purple-golden runes that looked like they were carved by the brush of the great Tao combined into the 8 trigrams diagram with a mystical aura. 5 figures were sitting on the diagram with their legs crossed. The 5 figures were wearing white robes with the word Monarch written on their chests. However, there were only 2 of them, yet their appearances were clearly visible. They were a man and a woman. As for the 3 figures in the middle, they were completely different. Their appearances were extremely blurry. In addition, there were 99 gray rays of light that were swimming continuously in his body like ancient dragons. It was as if a great mystery was about to be born in the unseen world. There are 5 pearl spirits of the Pearl of Heaven Monarch here. On top of it, the 3 burial generals have become 3 of the pearl spirits and are reincarnating. Zhou Xuandao took a deep breath. His eyes were filled with astonishment. It was obvious that Tsang had set up the Pearl of Heaven Monarch when he was reincarnating. He had asked the 3 burial generals to merge with the 3 pearl spirits and reincarnate to protect Tsang's reincarnation before he showed up. On top of it, it could also assist Tsang's reincarnation to rise rapidly in the primary upper realm. Ancient taboo. I bet you didn't expect the Pearl of Heaven Monarch you took out to contain such a great secret. Zhou Xuandao quickly collected his thoughts. Even with his calm mind, he was quite excited. He transmitted his voice, Qin Nan, don't just stand there, destroy them all. Qin Nan immediately collected his thoughts. He unleashed the new force in his body and merged it with the heaven-shattering saber. It turned into 5 peerless saber glows slashing forward. Empress Feiyue made her move simultaneously. She unleashed 5 streams of the force of 10 lifetimes. However, only 3 of them were used to destroy the pearl spirits that the 3 burial generals had turned into. The other 2 were used to capture the pearl spirits. Meanwhile, in the 32nd small immortal realm, one after another, gigantic moons with vertical pupils rose from the edge of the western region. In the end, 10 moons formed a line and floated in the sky. The bright moonlight lit up the entire 32nd small immortal realm like it was daytime. The invisible force lingered in every corner with a strong presence. Many masters of Tao felt like they were in a sea of moonlight. "Master, you're finally here." The ancient taboo dropped to its knees when it saw the scene. Its eyes would be tearing up if it had a complete body. For so many years, it had shouldered everything by itself. It was even forced to take out the Pearl of Heaven monarch that it had spent so much effort to find. However, it was still in a good mood. Even though it might lose a Pearl of Heaven monarch, it was relieved that Eternal Night Heaven Highness and the Wang clan were not allowed to harm the reincarnation of its master. Besides, Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun ruler, Qin Nan, and the others would not be able to come out anytime soon. Chapter 22-25. Meanwhile, in the world of the Heaven Emperor Orb. "Qin Nan, I need the 2 orb spirits." Empress Feiyue transmitted her voice. "Got it." Qin Nan did not hesitate. He controlled the 2 saber intents to attack the orb spirits of the 3rd burial generals. All of this seemed to happen very slowly, but in reality, it all happened in the time it takes for a spark to fly off a piece of flint. Qin Nan and Empress Feiyue's attacks landed simultaneously. Buzz. At that instant, the purple-golden formation seemed to be aware of something. The 8 trigrams began to spin rapidly, unleashing a formidable force. Bang bang bang! A series of explosions took place. Qin Nan and Empress Feiyue's attacks were nullified by the invisible force. Feiyue received the pattern. Qin Nan flicked his finger. The ownerless heaven pattern flew out and landed in front of Empress Feiyue. Empress Feiyue grabbed the pattern and inserted the power of 10 lifetimes into it like a surging river. It unleashed a shocking aura. Qin Nan did not stop there. He gathered all his power on the heaven-shattering saber. As soon as Empress Feiyue executed the ownerless heaven pattern, his saber glow slashed forward too. Bang! The invisible force dissipated with a loud bang. Following it, the brilliant saber glow penetrated the formation and landed on the orb spirits of the 3rd burial generals. A series of explosions took place once again. The orb spirits of the 3rd burial generals began to tremble vigorously, yet they did not break into pieces. However, only 33 of the 99 wisps of gray aura were left. "The gray aura can nullify the attack too?" Qin Nan was startled. He had missed the opportunity. 5 orb spirits? The 3rd burial generals are merging with the orb spirits to reincarnate? Meanwhile, Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun ruler, and the rest of the authorities were astounded when they saw the purple-golden formation. Their eyes were filled with disbelief. "Feiyue Qin Nan, how dare you?" Eternal Night Heaven Highness collected his thoughts in less than a breath. Boundless darkness surged out of his body, causing the whole place to turn pitch black. "Do it!" Huang Yun ruler and the rest of the authorities collected their thoughts too. Tremendous auras burst out of their bodies. Empress Feiyue flicked her finger and brought Qin Nan to the other side to avoid the terrifying force. Qin Nan's heart sank. Empress Feiyue's sudden appearance of 3 ancient swords would only buy them a few seconds of time to catch the enemy off guard. If they failed to destroy the orb spirits of the 3rd burial generals and claim the other 2 orb spirits, it would be extremely difficult for them to do it again. "Generals!" Eternal Night Heaven Highness's thunderous laughter shook the surroundings. The boundless force of rules transformed into a giant hand grabbing at the formation. Meanwhile, rays of light burst out of his body and slashed at Huang Yun ruler and the rest of the authorities like ancient swords. Crap! Huang Yun ruler and the rest of the authorities were startled. At that instant, Eternal Night Heaven Highness' giant hand landed on Qin Nan. Dong! A chime of a bell came out of nowhere. It echoed across the place with an imperious aura. The runes of the formation seemed to have woken up from a deep sleep. They turned into ferocious dragons roaring into the sky. Half of the dragons swung their claws at the Hand of Rules. The remaining half of the giant dragon's claws slapped out in all directions. Almost at the same time, The authorities at the scene sensed a destructive force bursting out from the dragon claw. It had the power to destroy everything in its path. Back off! The authorities felt a great chill running down their spine. They subconsciously executed various ancient forbidden arts and moves to leave the place at an unbelievable pace. Bang bang bang! It felt like the whole world was about to fall apart. The hand of rules was shattered into pieces with brute force. Terrifying gusts surged in all directions like an ancient calamity. The authorities were like tiny boats in a storm. They could be drowned at any second. What just happened? How could this formation be so powerful? I didn't think Empress Feiyue and Qin Nan were involved in the formation. The smile on Heaven Emperor's face stiffened. Qin Nan's eyes flickered with astonishment too. He and Empress Feiyue already knew it was not going to be easy to take down the formation. He had already planned to give the ownerless heaven pattern to Empress Feiyue. However, the power that the formation had unleashed had completely surpassed their level. In that case, why was it that when they attacked earlier, the power of the grand formation was only at that level? Roar! Deafening roars echoed across the place. Following it, a shocking sight took place. Most of the enormous dragons completely ignored the existence of the crowd and soared into the sky. They reached the end of the sky at an astonishing speed and swung their dragon claws down again. The great Tao shuddered violently. The place within a few million li was shattered into pieces. A huge gap appeared in the distance. The aura of the 32nd small immortal realm poured in from the gap. The remaining dragons intertwined with one another and formed an altar in the shape of a dragon under 5 figures. It emitted a blinding golden glow as it flew into the gap. Did they leave the world of the Pearl of Heaven Emperor? Qin Nan was astounded. Let's go. Empress Feiyue grabbed his shoulder and followed closely behind him like a tremendous sword glow. Meanwhile, in the 32nd small immortal realm, the atmosphere in the place changed after the appearance of the 10 ancient moons. It felt heavy and suffocating. What's wrong with the Pearl of Heaven Emperor? All of a sudden, the authorities turned their gazes toward the valley as they became aware of something. That floating heavenly emperor's pearl released streak after streak of resplendent holy light. Moreover, it was extremely chaotic, shaking intensely. Did they break the formation in advance? The ancient taboo's expression darkened upon seeing this. Bang! Following it, a shocking clap of thunder took place. An almost undetectable crack appeared on the celestial emperor's pearl, and a dragon-shaped altar rushed out from it. Moreover, it began to expand at an astonishing speed throughout the entire world. Chapter 22-26 is that the authorities of various factions, Moxie, Demon Emperor Wutian, and the others were startled. They could not believe it. What's going on? The ancient taboo, in particular, felt like a peerless lightning had struck its mind. It was completely dumbfounded. Why were there 5 pearl spirits? 3 of the pearl spirits were actually the 3 burial generals that were reincarnating? However, it was not the end of it. The altar in the shape of a dragon unleashed a tremendous force. The pure immortal intent within a few 100,000 li turned into illusionary dragons and entered the altar. With every head that entered, the light emitted by the altar grew brighter and brighter. In the end, the entire altar shone like the 11th moon, illuminating the world in all directions. Bang! All of a sudden, a huge mountain within a few 100,000 li shattered into pieces as if it had just received a great blow, revealing an enormous, immeasurably deep pit. Whoosh! A blue ray soared into the sky from deep inside the pit and quickly approached the altar. It was an ancient fan with mysterious words written on it. It was a drawing of 100 birds worshipping a phoenix. A few of the ribs of the fan were completely shattered, yet the aura it was emitting was still shocking. It was an ancient Tao-seeking weapon that was once in the possession of a heaven highness. Bang bang bang! The appearance of the ancient fan was like a sign. In less than a breath's time, the mountains nearby began to crack into pieces. Many lakes even evaporated as different kinds of light burst out from them. There were ancient Tao-seeking weapons, pills, scriptures, scrolls, and many other strange things. Most terrifyingly, countless white glows were emitted from an ancient forbidden ground, which turned into a skeleton with only half a body, landing not far away from the altar. In particular, the corpse was emitting wisps of pressure that caused even the great Tao to tremble. The rulers who were closer to the corpse tensed up as the pressure on them skyrocketed. The corpse of a Heaven Highness. The two rulers of Tao of the Su clan, one of the 7 Heaven Highness clans, shuddered. So many supreme treasures have appeared. The leaders of the various forces widened their eyes. It was as if they had opened the tomb of a heavenly venerate. TSK, truly unexpected. Song actually completely merged the soul of the 3rd burial general with the Pearl Spirit, carrying out a reincarnation and rebirth. Moreover, these 3 burial generals are quite interesting as well. With so many supreme treasures, they must have been set up in the instant they fused. Siepres. He was in a good mood now. Although he didn't have a bad impression of Tsang, he didn't have a good impression of him either. Now, because of his subordinate, the primordial taboo, Tsang had made a fool of himself and ruined a chess piece he had set up. It was also at this moment that another ray of light flew out from the Celestial Emperor's pearl. Empress Feiyue and Qin Nan showed up in front of the crowd in a stunning manner. Her eyes remained calm despite the appearance of the treasures. Her gaze remained fixed on the 5 figures as she swung her other hand forward. The heaven and earth within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles immediately underwent a tremendous change. Feiyue, are you seriously trying to compete with me? An imperious voice exploded as Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun ruler, and the rest of the authorities came out from the tiny crack. The place was plunged into complete darkness. Even the moonlight of the 10 moons could not penetrate the darkness. The entire heaven and earth within a radius of millions of miles turned into chaos due to the descent of the terrifying pressure. Any master of Tao who happened to be in the area would suffer serious injuries. Seniors, fellow cultivators, let's make our move first. Kill the 3 illusionary figures and claim the other 2 pearl spirits. Even if we can't get our hands on them, we must destroy them. Qin Nan quickly transmitted his thoughts to Progenitor Mingqiu, Progenitor Ling Huang, Ruler Qingyu, Progenitor Shuangdao, and the others to briefly explain the 5 figures. We must take one of them. Huang Yun ruler and the rest of the authorities quickly transmitted their thoughts to the authorities of the Wang clan, Li clan, Zheng clan, and other formidable factions. We don't have to compete with them, we just need to claim the remains of the Heaven Highness. The 2 authorities of the Su clan immediately made up their minds. Do it. The whole 30-second small immortal realm was startled in less than 5 breaths' time. The ancient Tao-seeking weapons of the various factions unleashed tremendous power and broke through the rift. The rulers of Tao displayed their terrifying strength as they crossed the void. Some of them even crossed a realm with a single step and arrived at the dragon-shaped altar in the blink of an eye. Bang bang bang! An unimaginable battle, one that countless people could have guessed, broke out in advance without any warning. If a master of Tao stood outside the 30-second small immortal realm and observed the situation with an eye technique, he would see that the eastern realm of the 30-second small immortal realm had fallen into the enemy's hands in less than 10 breaths' time. What he meant was that the great Tao of the world, as well as a certain amount of rules and order, were all destroyed by that terrifying power. It was the greatest battle in the primary upper realm. Master, please wait a moment, we will make our move at the most crucial moment. Moxie slowly removed the black robe he was wearing after transmitting his thought. Demon Emperor Wutian cracked his neck. The eyes of the terrifying demonic figures behind them reddened. That thick excitement and killing intent seemed to be about to condense into a solid substance. The Huangfu clan had completely vanished from the primary upper realm after the Great Battle. They had not shown up for tens of thousands of years, nor had they displayed their capabilities. Even though the people that had shown up today were not the full force of the Huangfu clan, but less than 30% of them, it was still their first battle. Once they showed up, everyone would know that the Huangfu clan was still alive. Chapter 22-27 Ancient Descending Hand. Eternal Knight Heaven Highness was clearly the most eye-catching person in the battle. The strongest person in the primary upper realm was now displaying his strength. He knocked back the experts around him, forcing them to a distance of 10,000 zhang. Then, he executed a secret technique created by a heavenly venerate. His right hand turned pitch black as it weaved through the crowd, strong gusts, and intent before landing on the pearl spirits of the 3 burial generals. He had originally wanted to take 5 at once, but now that all the major powers were swarming over, he decided to settle for the second best, and only take 3 would do. Don't even think about it. Ruler Huangyun, Ruler Miexiang, Ruler Duanmu, and the rest of the authorities made their moves almost at the same time. They executed all kinds of ancient moves, including Heaven Highness' secret art. Even though Eternal Knight Heaven Highness's move was extremely powerful, it still could not resist it. It soon shattered into pieces. The authorities of the other factions seemed to know what was going on. Most of them fixed their eyes on Eternal Knight Heaven Highness in the chaotic battle. A series of terrifying attacks swept across the sky. They are teaming up against me? Eternal Knight Heaven Highness's expression immediately turned unpleasant. Over the years, the rulers of Dao had been treating him with great respect, yet they dared to attack him now? If it was the Eternal Knight Empyrean from tens of thousands of years ago, he would naturally know very well that it was lonely at the top because he was unique. Therefore, when something really happened, everyone would think of suppressing him first. Only when he was suppressed would the others have a chance. Bang bang bang! Eternal Knight Heaven Highness began to unleash his peerless power. The power of the rules of darkness almost covered the entire place, as if it was going to replace the original rules of the heavens and earth in the Eastern realm. However, no matter how dark his night was, the rulers of Dao from the various factions still managed to set up their own light. They were like stars in the night sky, shining brilliantly. It was impossible to conceal their brilliance. Eternal Knight Heaven Highness's expression shifted. He cursed in his heart and backed off a few 100,000 zhang. His aura was only focused on one of the pearl spirits of the 3 burial generals. He was not stupid. If this continued, it would turn into a battle between him and the factions. It would not be worth it, and he might end up with nothing. Shua, Huangyun ruler and the rest of the authorities, Li Pasheng and Zheng Di immediately switched from defense to offense. They stabbed at the dragon-shaped altar like peerless blades and locked onto the other 2 pearl spirits of the 3rd burial generals. As soon as the battle broke out, the Wang clan and the Li clan, as well as the Zheng clan and the Mumin sect, had already decided to join forces. Apart from that, the other major forces had basically reached an alliance in secret. Great heaven-shifting technique. The royal cloud ruler suddenly performed a hand seal. An invisible ripple surged from one of the pearl spirits of the 3 burial generals, as if a hand of the great Tao was trying to take it away from the world. In the blink of an eye, a ray of sword light appeared out of nowhere and chopped it into pieces. Huang Yun Wang ruler's eyes glittered. He saw Empress Feiyue approaching him with a sword in her hand. Behind her were Qin Nan and the authorities of the 3 supreme Taoism factions. Such a lineup, even when placed in this monstrous battle, still appeared incomparably huge, like a peerless divine dragon. The head of the dragon was Empress Feiyue. Bang bang bang! The whole 30-second small immortal realm was immersed in a series of explosions. The shock waves of the battle soon spread to the northwestern and southern region. The cultivators who were still in the 30-second small immortal realm were terrified. Those below the earth immortal realm could not lift their gaze. Otherwise, their minds would be affected by the shockwaves. One of the leaders of the Sioux clan knocked back several of the powerful experts in front of him with a single fist strike. Another of the leaders of the Sioux clan immediately made a move, taking the celestial corpse and the precious treasures in its possession. Apart from the 5 pearl spirits, the Heaven Highness corpse was the most sought-after loot. "We got it. Senior brother, should we withdraw?" another ruler of the Sioux clan asked. "No way. If we withdraw now, people are going to suspect us. We should pretend to compete for the pearl spirits too, as long as we don't go too deep." A ruler of the Sioux clan transmitted his voice. The group of Sioux family powerhouses understood tacitly and launched one secret technique after another. At this moment, the leftmost pearl spirits of the 3/3 burial generals suddenly trembled violently. Golden patterns spread from the soles of its feet. A mystical aura spread across the place. "What's going on?" Many authorities who were in the midst of a battle frowned slightly. "Is it coming soon?" Eternal Night Heaven Highness's middle finger moved slightly. He had been holding back for a long time just to wait for this moment. Qin Nan, the reincarnator of the 3 burial generals, is about to show up. Zhou Xuandao transmitted his voice. "Reincarnator?" Qin Nan was startled. "It's very simple. When the 3 burial generals were killed, Song could only preserve the pieces of their souls. Song then merged them with the pearl spirits to turn them into a new existence. Generally speaking, when a cultivator reaches a certain level of cultivation or experiences something, the memories of their past life will be awakened in their mind. However, it's impossible to do that with the pearl spirit. They are equivalent to a memory, a force. Only when they merge with the person their destinies will the person receive their memories. It also means that the 3 burial generals have successfully reincarnated. Zhou Xuandao explained. "I see, which means there will be." Qin Nan came to a realization. Whoosh! At that instant, a tremendous ray of light flew toward the dragon-shaped altar from the southern region. To everyone's surprise, the ray of light was unbelievably fast. It also possessed a shocking mystical aura that allowed it to ignore the overwhelming pressure. In just 2 breaths, the ray of light entered the pearl spirit of the 3 burial generals under the confused gazes of the authorities. Dong! An imperious chime of a bell echoed. The illusory pearl spirit underwent an earth-shattering change in an instant. From its feet up, it condensed into a corporeal form. Chapter 22-28. The young man's name was Luo Chengliang. His Dao title was the 7-Sword Supreme. Luo Chengliang was a rogue cultivator. His parents and clansmen were killed when he was still in the earth immortal realm. He had come so far to avenge his parents. However, Luo Chengliang had no idea what was going on. He was only planning to use the opportunity to collect some ancient successions so he could achieve the greater success stage of the 9 heavens supreme realm. Why would he end up at the center of the battle? Why would he merge with the mysterious artifact that so many authorities were competing for? His heart skipped a beat under the overwhelming pressure. He instinctively tried to flee for his life, yet he realized he could no longer move his body. Bang! All of a sudden, it was as if a peerless thunderbolt had struck his mind. An extremely thick memory surged into his mind like an ancient river, and it caused him to be unable to refrain from letting out a long howl. Moreover, his will and mind were struck to the point of going blank. It was also at this moment that the blue lines all over his body shone brightly. Countless runes spread out in all directions with him as the center. An invisible will spread out in all directions. Meanwhile, the Tianqian sword in Empress Feiyue's hand let out a cry. If the Empress had not strengthened the seal on it, it would have flown out of her hand and returned to its rightful owner. Such a will, the cry of the Tianqian sword. The young man is the reincarnation of the lightless Heaven Highness. Zhou Xuandao said. The lightless Heaven Highness? Qin Nan's eyes sharpened. He was about to make his move. Hang on. Zhou Xuandao calmly said, Qin Nan, there's no need to rush it. Every faction is involved. It's impossible for you to destroy the reincarnation of the Orb Spirit and the other two Orb Spirits of the Triple Burial General. In my opinion, you shouldn't bother dealing with the reincarnation of the lightless Heaven Highness. You should set up a trap for the reincarnation of the lightless Heaven Highness with the little girl so you can destroy it. Moreover, the most important thing is that once the reincarnation of lightless Heavenly Sovereign or the next reincarnation of flawless Heavenly Sovereign appears, Eternal Night Heavenly Sovereign and the various great forces will not let them go. There is no need to worry that they will successfully reincarnate. If you make a move now, you will clash with the various great powers. It is very likely that in the end you will suffer great losses and not gain any benefit. Of the three burial generals, Celestial Lord Thoughtful was the strongest. Qin Nan immediately realized what was going on. He came to a stop and transmitted his voice to Empress Feiyue, Ancestor Mingqiu, and the rest of the authorities to alter their strategy. Why did lightless Heavenly Venerable reincarnate first? Eternal Night Heaven Highness immediately discovered Luo Chengliang's identity. His face darkened slightly. He turned into a black ray and charged at Luo Chengliang like a peerless black Gragon. So be it, lightless Heavenly Venerable, then. Let's capture him first before anything else happens. The reincarnation has appeared. Even though the authorities of the other factions were not as familiar with the situation as Zhou Xuandao and Eternal Night Heaven Highness, they soon realized what was going on. Their eyes flickered passionately as they made their move. If they could take Luo Chengliang down and suppress him with a secret art, they would have a way to acquire the memories and power of one of the three burial generals. Still trying to compete with me? Eternal Night Heaven Highness aura skyrocketed. The power of the rules of darkness that surged out of his body felt like it was going to drown the entire Eastern realm in darkness. His gaze was icy and sharp, sending chills down everyone's spine. He was the strongest cultivator of the primary upper realm, yet he had already compromised and made the first move. How could he possibly fail to take down lightless Heavenly Venerable's reincarnation? In the blink of an eye, Eternal Night Heaven Highness had already secured the upper hand in the battle. The authorities of the other factions were slightly slower than him. However, none of the big shots stopped. The authorities no longer cared about who was the strongest cultivator of the primary upper realm. They did not care who their opponents were as long as they could secure the fortunate encounter. Crap! The authorities were startled. Eternal Night Heaven Highness broke through the murderous intent of the authorities and grabbed Luo Chengliang with the ancient descending hand. Bang! The dragon-shaped altar reacted by emitting a brilliant glow to stop the attack. However, the power of the forbidding aura had been depleted by half. It did not have much energy left. It was shattered into pieces in just a single breath's time. Eternal Night Heaven Highness' eyes sharpened. A magnificent force burst out of his palm and left Luo Chengliang with serious injuries. His body was covered in wounds as if he was covered in blood. Countless densely packed pitch-black characters climbed onto the blue-veined patterns, forcibly suppressing the radiance that was being emitted. Lightless Heavenly Venerable's reincarnation was interrupted. The memories that were surging into Luo Chengliang's mind came to a stop too. I did it! Eternal Night Heaven Highness was overjoyed. In the nick of time, another change took place. Following a piercing sound, a pink glow came from the 31st small immortal realm. It penetrated the thick barrier and entered the second pearl spirit of the third burial generals. Dong! A bell chimed once again. The illusionary pearl spirit swiftly turned into a glamorous woman with long hair reaching her shoulders. The woman's aura was weaker than Luo Chengliang's. She was only in the peerless ruler realm. The woman's face turned extremely pale. She was teaching her child in the 31st small immortal realm, yet she had ended up in such a terrifying place all of a sudden. Great timing. Eternal Night Heaven Highness was overjoyed. The woman must be the reincarnation of flawless Heaven Highness. Whoosh! Eternal Night Heaven Highness swiftly made his move. He executed an ancient secret art. It was as if a black curtain had appeared, trying to sweep everything away. He purposely widened the area of his attack and dragged the other 3 pearl spirits into it too. The authorities would have a hard time dealing with them. Not today. Huang Yun ruler and the rest of the authorities were already prepared for it. They immediately collected their thoughts and executed their peerless arts to slash at the black curtain like sabers. Qin Nan, Empress Feiyue, Minchu progenitor, and the rest of the authorities were ready too. They spread out like an ancient net and unleashed their attacks without mercy. Chapter 22-29. 9 Winding Ocean Sword Art. Eternal Night Heaven Highness let out a roar. The boundless power of the rules of darkness gathered in his hand and turned into a peerless black sword. He swung the sword fiercely. The sound of waves splashing echoed in the surroundings. The terrifying sword intent permeated every inch of the void. Bang, bang, bang. However, in the short span of a few breaths, the crashing sounds became extremely faint, and the countless sword intents were scattered inch by inch. If the leaders were only attacking him with one attitude earlier, then now, they were attacking him from all sides, using all kinds of killing techniques to surround him layer by layer. Eternal Night Heaven Highness was startled. Despite his unwillingness, he still backed away. He no longer aimed his hand at the woman, but at one of the pearl spirits instead. He clearly knew he had no chance of claiming the reincarnation of one of the 3 burial generals. If that was the case, he might as well claim one of the pearl spirits of the Heaven Emperor orbs. Light of 10 lifetimes. Empress Feiyue took out an ancient mirror as if she already knew what was going to happen. A mystical light burst out of it and shone upon Eternal Night Heaven Highness. Eternal Night Heaven Highness stiffened. The attack he was about to execute was shattered into pieces too. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The authorities did not give up just because Eternal Night Heaven Highness had backed off. They continued to attack him fiercely. Every authority was well aware that Eternal Night Heaven Highness would be relieved if he had claimed one of the most important pearls. Based on Eternal Night Heaven Highness's style, he would not risk his life further. Eternal Night Heaven Highness had taken a step back. As long as they persisted, Eternal Night Heaven Highness would give up. Damn it! As they thought, Eternal Night Heaven Highness cursed in his heart. He glared at Empress Feiyue and decisively turned into a black ray. He left the dragon-shaped altar and flew into the distance. He did not continue to fight. He chose to withdraw from the battle. As soon as he left, the eyes of the authorities flickered. They were initially working together, but they were now at odds with one another like fire and water. In the battle just now, the killing intent could be roughly divided into 2 groups. One was from Eternal Night Heavenly Venerable, and the other was from the various major forces. But now, they were divided into dozens of groups, each fighting their own battles. It was truly chaotic. Boom. Boom. The battle did not calm down in the slightest. It seemed to have become even more intense. To every cultivator, war and fire were undoubtedly the best tempering, and Qin Nan was no exception. The battle against Xiang Hun had allowed Qin Nan to reach a whole new level. The battles against the authorities had allowed Qin Nan to grow rapidly too. He had a better understanding of the rulers of Dao's strength and capabilities. Now, Ruler Huang Yun, Ruler Duanmu, and Ruler Miexiang exchanged glances with one another and performed a mystical hand seal. An ancient altar appeared in the rift. Open! Li Pasheng and the authorities of the Li clan were well prepared too. They each took out an ancient artifact and activated it to its limit, firing rays of light into the altar. Roar! A deep groan echoed in the eastern realm. The authorities immediately sensed a great pressure. Following it, the ancient altar began to transform rapidly. In just a few breaths' time, it had turned into an enormous creature. It had the shape of a whale, a roc, and godly wings. The ancient sacred beast, Kuan, Heaven Highness Hai Kuan's artifact? Many of the authorities withdrew their gazes. During the era of the four Supreme Highnesses, Heaven Highness Hai Kuan was one of the brightest among the experts. He was one of the two Supreme Highnesses with unparalleled strength. That was especially true of its life essence treasure, which was different from that of other celestials. It was made from the bones it had shed along its path of metamorphosis, as well as the hearts of the three seas, as well as various precious materials of heaven and earth. It was incredibly powerful. To their surprise, it had fallen into the hands of the Wang clan. Change of plans. The authorities of the Zheng clan and the Mumen sect transmitted their thoughts to one another. They immediately took out a few ancient talismans. Each ancient talisman was set ablaze by itself, emitting a tremendous force that swiftly gathered together and transformed into 13 enormous illusionary figures, emitting a shocking aura. They were the Heaven Highness talismans, also known as the 13 Emperor Creations talismans. However, the two factions did not join the Wang clan and the Li clan in competing for Heaven Highness Wuxia's reincarnation. They were going for the Pearl Spirit of the Heaven Emperor Orb instead. It did not mean they were not interested in Heaven Highness Wuxia's reincarnation, but they would have to pay a great price if they were to compete for the Pearl Spirit of Heaven Highness Wuxia's reincarnation. They were planning to use their trump cards to deal with Zhangji's reincarnation. Huang Yun, you won't get your way. Haha, that's a great plan. The Han clan, the Wu clan, the Supreme Taoism factions, the ancient tribes, and the rulers of Tao who were rogue cultivators did not back off. They executed their trump cards too. The foundations of these great forces, especially the 7 great celestial venerate families, are indeed terrifying. Qin Nan exclaimed upon seeing this. He was relieved too. If Zhou Xuandao did not remind him at the crucial moment, he would not be able to make up for the losses if he stubbornly kept his eyes on the reincarnations of the 3 burial generals. At this moment, the eerie blood-red moonlight from the 10 moons had become even denser. Many authorities had also noticed this scene. Bang bang bang! The authorities of the Wang clan and the Li clan broke through the obstacles. Qin Nan, Empress Feiyue, and the others did not just leave them be. They kept trying to stop them with the help of the other factions, but they still managed to break through the barriers in the end. Huang Yun ruler rose to his feet and inflicted serious injuries on the beautiful woman. He forcibly sealed her up and took her away. Back off! The authorities of the two factions were smart. They did not act greedy like Eternal Night Heaven Highness. They quickly backed off and left the battlefield. In comparison, the Zheng clan, Mumen sect, and the rest of the factions had yet to achieve their goal. Qin Nan, Empress Feiyue, Ancestor Mingqiu, and the others gradually revealed their fangs. Meanwhile, the last pearl spirit of the 3 burial generals shuddered vigorously. Countless golden runes spread rapidly. They were brighter than the Wuxia Orb spirits and the Wuxia Orb spirit. Heaven Highness Wuang's reincarnation. Chapter 2230. Sky-stride blow. Qin Nan appeared not far away from the dragon-shaped altar with a flicker. Following it, he immediately sensed strong murderous intent locking onto him. The alarm in his heart went off as a great chill ran down his spine. Sky Taihuang, Yin and Yang split. Ancestor Mingqiu, Ancestor Ling Wang, and the rest of the authorities immediately executed their moves. An illusionary world appeared out of nowhere. The force of Yin and Yang spread in all directions like a tide. If it's possible, let's take down Qin Nan. The eyes of the authorities of the Wu clan, the Han clan, the Supreme Taoism factions, and the rest of the factions flickered. They immediately made their moves and used all kinds of trump cards like a wild storm. That being said, they did not think they could actually take down Qin Nan. After all, Qin Nan was supported by the three supreme Taoism factions and Empress Feiyue. However, the three supreme Taoism factions and Empress Feiyue would be hesitant if they were to use such a tactic. Roar! Suddenly, a terrifying roar echoed across the entire eastern region. Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huangyun ruler, and the rest of the authorities raised their heads when they sensed something. They could only see the chaos at the edge of the eastern domain being trampled open. A ferocious beast over 100,000 zhang long and 10,000 zhang tall, with a pitch-black body that resembled a dog or a wolf, appeared out of nowhere. The beast's eyes were bloodshot, as if they were formed by two worlds. It had eerie fangs on both sides. Its body rose and fell as it breathed, as if it possessed boundless power. The demonic intent it was emitting was utterly shocking and magnificent. Ruler Ken Lang? Many authorities were startled. Overlord Ken Lang had stepped into the Overlord realm more than 15,000 years ago. He was the most dazzling overlord of the demonic path in the entire Great Upper Realm at that time. He looked like both a human and a demon. In the many great battles that followed, he had displayed a terrifying cultivation base. However, Ruler Ken Lang had disappeared mysteriously in the past 5,000 years. He had never shown up again. Now, he had shown up in his true form. Was he trying to get his hands on the Heaven Emperor Orb too? Kiki, fellow Taoists, are you all well? An eerie voice echoed in everyone's ears. Everyone could feel a cold breeze blowing past them. Following this, they saw a strange figure over 10 zhang tall with 4 eyes and covered in crimson runes. He also emanated a devilish aura, but unlike Sovereign Ken Lang's, his devilish aura was more restrained and refined. Lord of the Four Demons? The authorities were startled once again. They were also the only overlords of the Devil Tao in the world. Two big shots of the demonic path have appeared together. Some of the more sensitive people had a thought in their mind. Are they here for Qin Nan? Progenitor Mingqiu, Progenitor Ling Huang, and the others straightened their faces. It was very likely that the other party was after the item that Qin Nan had taken from Huang Fuju. Roar! Ruler Ken Lang let out another roar. His enormous figure sprang forward and reached the center of the chaotic battle. He opened his bloody mouth and tore at the authorities of the Han clan and the Wu clan. Lord of the Four Demons took out a stick and tapped it in the direction of the Supreme Taoism factions. Runes immediately intertwined above the authorities and unleashed a shocking murderous aura. They are helping Qin Nan? The expressions of many people changed at the same time. Damn it! Eternal Night Heaven Highness cursed. Great! Progenitor Mingqiu, Progenitor Ling Huang, and the authorities were overjoyed. They did not expect Qin Nan to recruit the two overlords of the Devil Tao. Bang bang bang! The situation changed within the blink of an eye. Qin Nan and his crew forcibly resisted the alliance of the formidable factions. Even though they were at a slight disadvantage, they did not lose ground. Buzz! At that instant, 9 figures suddenly appeared behind Empress Feiyue. Each figure was holding a sword just like her. Various auras rose from her body, intimidating the surroundings. The pupils of the 3 rulers not far away from her instantly contracted as a great sense of danger welled up in their hearts. Blue Dome Sword. Empress Feiyue's figure flickered. The 3 rulers of Tao could only see their vision turning white as a sword glow slashed at them from the distance. It felt like an ancient sword glow was slashing at them like a desolation. Crap! The 3 rulers of Tao were startled. They quickly executed their trump cards and backed away. They did not dare to take the attack head-on. The pressure on Qin Nan immediately dissipated by half. He was already prepared for it. His eyes emitted a dual-colored glow as he appeared above the spirit of Heaven Highness Wu Wang. He raised the heaven-shattering saber high in the air. A new force burst out of his body. At this moment, from the end of the western region, A monstrous light shot into the sky and entered the illusory figure at an astonishing speed. Eternal Night Heaven Highness harumphed coldly. His face twisted. He initially wanted to make his move, but two authorities of the demon path, Qin Nan and Empress Feiyue, had joined the battle too. He no longer had the chance to make his move. He would only waste his energy if he tried to make his move. Take down the other two spirits. The authorities of the other factions had no choice but to give up. The bell chimed once again. The illusionary spirit of Heaven Highness Wu Wang immediately materialized. Crimson Emperor Saber intent. Qin Nan immediately made his move. He was going to execute the coexistence of 10 arts to inflict serious injuries on the spirit of Heaven Highness Wu Wang's reincarnation and take it away. However, when the fiery saber intent on the heaven-shattering saber was about to burst out, Qin Nan's eyes widened. His body stiffened as if he had been struck by lightning. The figure that the spirit of Heaven Highness Wu Wang's reincarnation had black hair and was holding a black saber tightly. Even though the figure's aura was only at the peak peerless ruler realm, making the difference between him and Qin Nan like the difference between the heavens and earth, the person still gave Qin Nan a great shock. The figure was none other than his senior brother in the secondary lower realm, Tang Qingshan. Tang Qingshan was the reincarnation of the spirit of Heaven Highness Wu Wang and the Heaven Emperor, the leader of the 3 burial generals under Zhangji's command. It's him. Empress Feiyue's blue eyes flickered. She knew how important Tang Qingshan was to Qin Nan. Chapter 2231. However, it was as if Qin Nan had turned into a statue. He could not hear anything. Progenitor Mingqiu, Progenitor Ling Huang, and the others immediately realized that something was not right. Who's that guy? Moxie and Demon Emperor Wutian, who were hiding in the dark, frowned. Here's our chance. The authorities of the Zheng clan, the Han clan, the Mumin sect, and the rest of the factions were startled. They switched the hand seals they were holding and attacked Qin Nan instead. Bang! Empress Feiyue made her move. She summoned 10 rare phenomena with the power of her 10 lifetimes, which stood in front of Qin Nan like a magnificent palace to protect Qin Nan. Qin Nan! Now's not the time to be lost in thought. It's very likely to be a conspiracy. What you need to do now is to suppress him. You should be able to handle it no matter what happens in the end. Empress Feiyue transmitted her voice. Her cold, emotionless tone was replaced with a hint of sternness. Qin Nan shuddered. These few words were like peerless sharp swords that cleaved his mind and soul. That being said, he would never accept the truth if it was in the past. The reason being that Song was his nemesis. If Tang Qingshan had become the reincarnation of Heaven Highness Wu Wang's orb spirit, wouldn't he have to fight him? Suppress. In the nick of time, Qin Nan quickly collected his thoughts. The new energy in his body surged forward and formed a pagoda, crushing down on Empress Feiyue. Progenitor Mingqiu, Progenitor Ling Huang, and the others let out relieved sighs. To their relief, Qin Nan was not too late to react. Bang! Following a loud crash, a shocking sight took place. An invisible force appeared above Tang Qingshan and resisted Qin Nan's pagoda with brute force. Is that? Many of the big shots were startled. Although Qin Nan hadn't used a killing move, Qin Nan's attack was comparable to the attack of an early-stage sovereign. It wasn't something that the dragon-shaped altar's remaining restrictive power could block. Whoosh! Then, Tang Qingshan's tightly shut eyes slowly opened. His eyes were completely different from before. They were emitting 9 brilliant colors. Then, an extremely shocking pressure burst out from his body. It was as if there was a peerless divine sword in the endless darkness. It slashed through the air, illuminating everything and sweeping across the entire eastern region. The rulers of Tao felt a great pressure bearing down on them. Empyrean pressure? Eternal Night Heavenly Venerable's mind shook. This pressure, the ancient taboo whose face was ashen and whose mind had gone blank shuddered. How many years have passed? Tang Qingshan spoke. His voice was like thousands of claps of thunder stacked on top of one another. Not only was it deafening, it was shocking too. Only one heaven, Highness? They are all rulers of Tao? Which small immortal realm is this? Why are the rules of cultivation so weak? TSK, if that's the case, the primary upper realm must have fallen into an extraordinary decline. Tang Qingshan exclaimed while looking ahead. Your Heaven Highness Wu Wang? A wisp of your will? Eternal Night Heavenly Venerable was the first to react. He asked with a loud voice. Heaven Highness Wu Wang had died in the past. It was almost impossible for him to come back to life. Besides, even if Tsang was able to do it, Heaven Highness Wu Wang's cultivation was definitely not in the Heaven Highness realm. He was at most in the Master realm. Do you even need to ask? Tang Qingshan's eyes flickered with disdain. He did not even bother looking at Heaven Highness Wu Wang. He scanned his surroundings with his divine sense. His eyes flickered coldly. Wuxia and Wuguang were gone. It was obvious that some formidable factions had taken them. However, Heaven Highness Wu Wang was good at controlling his emotions. He was not affected by it at all. He looked at Qin Nan. With a single glance, the nine-colored light in his eyes suddenly shone brightly. He had never seen the power that Qin Nan was unleashing. He had no idea what it was, but he could tell that even though the power was insignificant, it was extremely powerful and extraordinary. Most importantly, he sensed a familiar trace of devil intent, as well as an aura that he loathed. Die. Tang Qingshan did not waste any time, nor did he do anything unnecessary. A terrifying force burst out of his body and surged forward like a tsunami. It felt like it was going to destroy everything in the world. He had no idea who Qin Nan was, but he would surely kill him if he was related to Zhoudi's aura. Qin Nan was startled. He sensed a great danger. Wordless heavenly scripture. Empress Feiyue descended from the sky with a scripture in her hand. Countless words burst out of the scripture and poured down like a river. Bang, bang, bang. The two attacks collided, resulting in a shocking scene. A mere ruler in the greater success stage dares to stop me? Tang Qingshan unleashed an imperious aura as he grabbed forward with his hand. Ancient sounds echoed across the place as an enormous force of the rules was unleashed. Empress Feiyue remained unmoved. She wore a cold expression as the words formed an icy sword in her hand, slashing forward. The sword glow was like a dragon devouring the heavens and earth. Tang Qingshan's eyes widened. He blurted out in astonishment, "Someone like you is born in such a dilapidated era?" As soon as he finished the sentence, the force of rules that he had unleashed was shattered into pieces. Empress Feiyue emerged with her sword and stabbed at his forehead. "Haha, you're very strong indeed, but it's not the time for me to fight you yet." Tang Qingshan let out a loud laugh. His body suddenly shattered, turning into countless specks of light, and dodged the sword. In the next moment, his figure appeared at the end of the sky of the eastern region, under the 10 bright moons. Especially under the illumination of the blood-red moonlight, he had an indescribable feeling of bewitchment. Eternal Night Heaven Highness and the rest of the authorities were not idiots. They immediately realized what was going on upon seeing this. Sanzang would be reincarnated before Tsangji. Heaven Highness Wu Wang had a will. The order of the world, the impermanence of the Tao. 10 moons in the sky, the blood-red glow dyeing the world, reversing the heavens and earth, overturning yin and yang. Tang Qingshan uttered an ancient curse. His voice was not particularly loud, yet for some reason, it spread across the 30-second small immortal realm. Chapter 2232. As I thought, Heaven Highness Wu Wang's will has shown up to help Tsang reincarnate successfully. The authorities murmured. Huang Yun, fellow cultivators, Heaven Highness Wu Wang is only a wisp of his will. He has attached himself to this peerless ruler. His strength is only slightly stronger than the strength of a Heaven Highness in the early stage. Why don't we work together and suppress him? Eternal Night Heaven Highness's eyes flickered. He transmitted his thoughts to Huang Yun ruler and the rulers of the Li clan. Got it. Huang Yun ruler and the rest of the authorities immediately made up their minds. Supreme heavens and earth, eternal darkness. Eternal Night Heaven Highness immediately made his move. The power of the rules of darkness burst out of his body and turned into a strange-looking beast that charged forward with a roar. Huang Yun ruler and the others came to a stop too. They executed all kinds of moves to form a huge web looming over Tang Qingshan. An unknown Heaven Highness dares to set his eyes on me? Tang Qingshan did not conceal the disdain in his eyes. He performed a hand seal, causing the 10 moons to emit a shocking crimson glow, which landed on his figure. Several blood-red runes appeared around him and formed a rune palace covering an area of 100 li. Furthermore, if one were to observe them carefully, one would discover that there was a mysterious figure sitting cross-legged within each and every rune. Bang bang bang! A series of shocking explosions took place. Under the overwhelming power and killing intent, the entire rune palace immediately trembled violently. However, there was not a single crack on it. There was no sign of it shattering at all. Did he trigger the rare phenomenon of the 10 blood moons? Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun ruler, and the rest of the authorities were startled. They stopped attacking. The rare phenomenon of the 10 blood moons had spread across the 30-second small immortal realm. It had triggered the appearance of all the successions and fortunate encounters in the small immortal realm. They would not be able to break through it in a short period of time. It was meaningless to continue attacking. Don't worry about him, let's take down the other 2 pearl spirits first. Empress Feiyue transmitted her thoughts to Ancestor Mingqiu, Ancestor Ling Huang, and the others. The leaders of the other factions reacted immediately and made their moves as well. The entire eastern region was still immersed in a chaotic war. Senior Zhou, does this mean that he and I will be mortal enemies in the future? Qin Nan observed the situation of the battle and was ready to take action at any time. At the same time, he also transmitted a message with a heavy tone. Based on the current situation, I'm afraid that's the case. You also know that the so-called reincarnation is nothing more than the acquisition of the memories of the previous life, the cultivation method, the possession of the supreme treasures, and so on. Generally speaking, the awakened memories of the previous life are fragmented and incomplete. Therefore, in most cases, after awakening the memories of one's past life, one will only be subtly influenced by it. The subjective will still belong to oneself. However, a reincarnation at the level of Celestial Sovereign Wu Wang is different from the rest. Moreover, Celestial Sovereign Wu Wang used a heaven-defying technique to leave behind a strand of his will. Therefore, his memories will have an extremely huge impact on Tang Qingshan. Even if you don't want to be his enemy, he will still want to kill you, Zhou Xuandao said slowly. The words served as a bucket of cold water being poured onto Qin Nan's figure. However, Zhou Xuandao paused for a moment before changing the topic. It's not like there's no way to solve the problem. In our era, there were experts who forcibly erased the memories of the previous life of others to restore them to normal. Qin Nan immediately blurted out, "Senior, what should I do then?" He would not go against Tang Qingshan no matter what. Zhou Xuandao shook his head and said, "I don't know much about it, but we can awaken the pattern spirit. He's more familiar with it." Even though he did not get an answer, Qin Nan let out a relieved sigh in his heart. Either way, there was still a way. Following it, Qin Nan's figure suddenly moved and joined the battle. Qin Nan, show me how strong you are as the reincarnation of a Supreme Highness. A peak ruler realm of the Han clan decisively shifted his position. He no longer fought Empress Fei and the others. He executed an eye technique to lock onto Qin Nan. However, before he could execute his attack, he felt a great chill running down his spine. He saw the wolf ruler's giant demonic claw crossing the rift and grabbing in his direction. Bang bang bang! The shocking battle lasted for a few hundred breaths. Qin Nan resisted the attack of a ruler realm expert in the greater success stage under the protection of the authorities and claimed one of the orb spirit. Tang Qingshan's eyes flickered coldly upon seeing this, but he did not stop Qin Nan. However, Qin Nan and the others did not stop there. They locked onto the last orb spirit. Still trying to claim it? The eyes of the authorities of the other factions turned cold. Initially, there were still a few factions that did not target Qin Nan and his crew, but they had now switched their target. It could be said that they were ganging up on them. The great battle became even more intense. A few thousand breaths later, Empress Fei soared into the sky and claimed the last orb spirit with a magnificent force. Damn it! The faces of the leaders of the various great forces immediately became quite unsightly. They had yet to claim the orb spirits. This time, it can be said that 5 pearl spirits have appeared. But now, only 1 pearl of the Heavenly Emperor has appeared. Next, the remaining 4 pearls of the Heavenly Emperor will most likely appear. We have to take 2 of them. Minchu Progenitor transmitted his voice. Qin Nan nodded and glanced around. Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, and the rest of the authorities had already placed their hands on the orb of the Heaven Emperor that the ancient taboo had claimed. Qin Nan and the others did not compete with the orb of the Heaven Emperor. They focused on the 10 moons in the sky while fending off the attacks from the other factions. The tides were surging fiercely. It felt like a string was being pulled to its limit and was about to break. Go! At this moment, Tang Qingshan let out a roar and pressed his hands toward the void. Chapter 2233. Buzz. A shocking sight took place. The rules of the Great Tao in the 32nd Small Immortal Realm began to boil like boiling water. Every inch of the 32nd Small Immortal Realm was dyed in blood too, as if the whole realm was soaked in blood. Even the cultivators in the 33rd Small Immortal Realm and the 31st Small Immortal Realm sensed something unusual. Zhang Ji's reincarnation is making such a huge fuss. Mo Xie and Demon Emperor Wutian, who had been hiding in the dark, exclaimed. Even when Qin Nan had awakened Zhou Di and Huang Fuju, he did not make such a huge fuss. That being said, they clearly knew that Zhang Ji was only doing this because he had no choice. Otherwise, he would not put himself in such a dangerous situation. Bang! 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 At that instant 2 enormous crimson lightning bolts appeared out of nowhere from the northern and southern districts and struck down ferociously. The heavens and earth within a few million li shook vigorously. An orb the size of a fist slowly appeared too. Let's head to the southern realm, Ancestor Mingchu said before vanishing into thin air. The authorities of various factions turned into rays of light too. Apart from Eternal Night Heaven Highness, the Wang clan, and the Li clan, the authorities of the Sherdao tribe, the Mumin sect, and the Zheng clan did not make any moves. Even though they had yet to acquire the Pearl Spirit, if they managed to acquire a Pearl of the Heaven Emperor, they still had a chance to negotiate with the factions that had the Pearl Spirit. The authorities of the 3 factions each constructed a pitch-black altar over 100 zhang tall. It was engraved with mysterious runes and embedded with rocks the size of a fist. Every single stone was emitting a grayish aura that flowed into the center of the altar and gathered together to form some sort of ancient pattern. Qin Nan immediately recognized the rocks as the stones of time and space. He also noticed that the altars were filled with a formidable force of time and space. The authorities of the 3 factions swiftly performed a series of mystical hand seals to insert the power of rules into the altar. Each of the altars began to buzz as they unleashed a shocking absorption force, absorbing the crimson glows into them. Do these people want to use their souls to cross over to the ancient times to become an Empyrean? Zhou Xuandao saw through the mystery at a glance. He smiled faintly and said, "This idea is not bad. There is a chance. However, from the way they're absorbing the power of the phenomenon, it's clear that they haven't fully stabilized the technique yet. It's impossible to tell what will happen after their soul transmigrates to the ancient era. It's extremely risky." Qin Nan took a few more glances before he stopped paying attention. All his attention was still focused on the 10 moons. Time passed bit by bit. Not long after, the flames of war erupted in the northern and southern regions. The 10 imposing figures on the bright moon remained motionless, but everyone could clearly see that the hand seals they were forming were constantly changing. It was as if they didn't have enough power and still needed to accumulate more. Around half the period it took an incense to burn, everything seemed to have frozen. "It's here." The authorities were startled. Qin Nan's figure tensed too. Bang, bang, bang. Following a series of piercing noises, the seals of the magnificent figures emitted a brilliant crimson glow and landed on the ground of the 32nd small immortal realm. The crimson glow was stronger than the previous crimson glow. It even had a hint of suppression. Following it, the 10 crimson light pillars gathered together as if they were being pulled by some invisible force. They landed on Tang Qingshan within the blink of an eye. Tang Qingshan spread his arms with a face full of enjoyment and fascination. "Is that?" The hearts of the authorities shuddered violently. Qin Nan felt like a great clap of thunder had struck him in his divine sense. According to the strongest immortal, by Zhongxing, when the 10 crimson moons gathered, the person they were shining on was the reincarnation of Tsang. Now, the 10 crimson light pillars were all shining on Tang Qingshan. Did that mean not only was Tang Qingshan the reincarnation of Heavenly Highness Wu Wang's Pearl Spirit, but he was also the reincarnation of Tsang? This is really unexpected. Moxie and Demon Emperor Wutian were the first to recover from the shock. The former's eyes flickered with a demonic glow. He would not feel the same way if the reincarnation of the Tsangji was someone else, but the reincarnation of the Tsangji just happened to be a peerless ruler. Judging from Qin Nan's reaction, it was obvious that the peerless ruler was extremely important to him. Besides, if the Pearl Spirit of Heavenly Highness Wu Wang was reincarnated into the peerless ruler's body, they might have a way to erase the peerless ruler's will and restore his will. However, with Tsang's help, they had no chance at all. Qin Nan and the peerless ruler were surely enemies. Was all of this intentional or unintentional? It's great news for us. Amos squinted his eyes, and the corners of his mouth curled up. He was still pondering how he could help Qin Nan refine his master's flesh as soon as possible. However, the situation had given him the perfect opportunity. However, at that moment, Tang Qingshan made an unexpected move. He suddenly dropped to his knees in the air and slapped his hands in front of him. He uttered, "Master, time has passed and the heavens and earth are deteriorating. It's time for you to wake up from your slumber and save the world." As soon as he finished speaking, the 10 beams of blood-colored light that had gathered around him suddenly flew forward. It's not him." Moxie, Demon Emperor Wutian, and the authorities of various factions were startled. In the blink of an eye, before Qin Nan could react from the shock, he could feel his body turning warm. Everything in front of him was dyed in the color of blood, preventing him from seeing anything clearly. What's going on? Qin Nan was dumbfounded. What was going on? The rest of the authorities shuddered when they saw the 10 crimson light pillars gathering on Qin Nan's figure. Bang! Chapter 2234. How is this possible? Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, Li Pasheng, and the authorities of various factions were dumbfounded. They could not believe their eyes. Qin Nan was Zhou Di's reincarnation. Yet, two Supreme Highnesses had reincarnated in Qin Nan's body? Most importantly, everyone was clearly aware that Zhou Di and Song were mortal enemies that couldn't be described with words. The enmity between them was impossible to resolve. Zhou Di and Song were the main reason why the ancient battle had taken place. How could such two supreme Empyreans reincarnate in the same person? My master? The ancient taboo's voice was trembling. Its figure was trembling too. The shock it received was greater than the fact that the pearl spirits of the three burial generals had shown up with the other two pearl spirits. No matter what, it would never have thought that the person it wanted to kill, even in its dreams, the person it had used countless methods to kill, and the person it had even sent its main body to kill, would in the blink of an eye become the master it had been waiting for tens of thousands of years. Master, this demon Emperor Wutian's voice was trembling too. Emo Xie beside him was lost in his thoughts. He did not hear anything at all. Zhou Xuandao, who was residing deep inside Qin Nan's soul, shared the same reaction too. They could not help but admit that the scene before them had given them a great shock. Their minds were filled with countless doubts. They knew Qin Nan was the reincarnation of Zhou Di and Huang Fuju, and now there was Tsang too. Three Supreme Highnesses reincarnated in the same person? At this rate, didn't that mean all four Supreme Highnesses were reincarnated in Qin Nan's body? Why would Zhou Di and Tsang reincarnate in Qin Nan's body if they were related to each other? Could it be that the three Supreme Highnesses were using Qin Nan's body to compete against one another? Or was there some other reason behind it? Besides, who was Qin Nan now? In comparison to them, Tang Qingshan and Empress Feiyue were the only ones who were doing better. Tang Qingshan had just appeared in this world. He did not want to deal with the ancient taboo, so he did not know much about it. He was just a little surprised. He did not expect the young man he was about to kill would become his master. That being said, he was still confused. Wasn't the authorities overreacting a little too much? Was he that inexperienced? Unlike him, Empress Feiyue soon collected her thoughts after recovering from her astonishment. Her blue eyes remained calm, as if she was emotionless. To her, everything was very simple. It did not matter how many Supreme Highnesses were reincarnated in their Highnesses. Qin Nan was Qin Nan and Feiyue Qin Nan in the end. Qin Nan was Qin Nan in Empress Feiyue's eyes. Only Qin Nan could make her sacrifice everything and use all her forbidden arts to protect Qin Nan without any regrets. Song has reincarnated in my body? Qin Nan's expression changed tremendously as he realized that something was not right. He had always treated Song as his greatest enemy. Now that Song had reincarnated in his body, the enemy he was going to take out was him? Was he going to kill himself? At that instant, Qin Nan's eyes widened all of a sudden as he sensed a crimson glow appearing out of nowhere inside his body, which transformed into 8 eerie words. Those who take the seal will suffer the Tao tribulation. Qin Nan had experienced the same thing before. When he obtained the 9 Dragons seal and was on the verge of achieving the 9 Heavens supreme realm, the Tao tribulation had exposed him to the world. His identity as Zhou Zhao's reincarnation and his secret of practicing the 12 Tao of martial arts were exposed too. It attracted the attention of the supreme Taoism factions and the true form of the ancient taboo. Empress Feiyue was forced to use a forbidden art and only had a year left to live. The Tao tribulation greatly affected Qin Nan. Qin Nan initially thought he had overcome the Tao tribulation, but it showed up again when he entered the Void Heaven realm. Now it was starting to take effect. Could it be that Song has reincarnated in my body because of the Tao tribulation? That doesn't make sense. According to Senior Zhou, it's up to fate to decide who a person is reincarnated in. That doesn't make sense either. If Zhou Di and Huang Fuju were reincarnated in my body, they should at least be tied together. But now Qin Nan's thoughts were in a mess. Whoosh, whoosh, Whoosh! At this moment, the 5 pearls of the Celestial Emperor that had yet to be taken away by the various factions seemed to have received some sort of order. The perfectly round pearls emitted a peerless light and rushed into the clouds. Dang! 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 A series of chimes could be heard echoing in the air. Glowing runes spread rapidly in all directions with Qin Nan at the center. They eventually formed a mysterious pattern of 8 dragons intersecting with one another. 4 chimes, the pattern of 8 dragons appeared. It was a rare phenomenon that would only happen when someone was awakening the memories of their past life. Meanwhile, the 10 illusionary figures on the 10 moons in the sky began to perform hand seals. They had performed 99,999 seals within a single breath. Following it, they slapped their palms in the direction of the 30-second small immortal realm. Wisps of purple light burst out from the palms like ancient godly dragons and landed on Qin Nan's figure at lightning speed. Within the blink of an eye, Qin Nan was covered in a blood-red glow as if he was wearing an ancient monarch robe. His aura and imperious aura rose rapidly as if he had broken through an ancient seal. Qin Nan immediately became the center of attention. It was as if everything in the primary upper realm, including the rules, the great Tao, the heavens and earth, had lost their brilliance before him. Tang Qingshan and the ancient taboo stiffened as if they were struck by lightning. Even though the aura were not as strong as before, they were still too familiar with it. Master, welcome back to the 9 heavens. Tang Qingshan knocked his head on the rift without hesitation. Chapter 2235. Whoosh! With Qin Nan at the center, the chaotic space within 100,000 li was dyed purple. It began to spin rapidly like a giant vortex. Pieces of purple crystals of different sizes floated out of the vortex and turned into rays of light. They entered Qin Nan's mind and merged with one another. Qin Nan's eyes widened. He was extremely familiar with the purple crystals. They were formed by Tsang's memory pieces. Whoosh! Meanwhile, the new force in Qin Nan's body that consisted of the impenetrable sacred flesh, the art of the immortal demon, and the 12 arts of Tao seeking began to run on its own. Its speed reached its limit within the blink of an eye. Bang! All of a sudden, this brand new power completely split apart. His left side shone with dazzling sagelight, which was the invulnerability to all magic. His right side resonated with his acupoints, and a devilish projection sat there cross-legged. The natural law of the superior devil, and the superior devil world appeared behind him. Are they resisting? Empress Feiyue immediately realized what was going on. However, to her surprise, following 2 deafening blasts, 2 terrifying auras surged into the surroundings from Qin Nan's left and right. 2 illusionary figures appeared too. As soon as they appeared, everything in the world lost its brilliance too. The aura that Qin Nan unleashed when he first put on the purple glowing monarch robe was no weaker than the aura that Qin Nan unleashed when he first put on the purple glowing robe. Bang bang bang! A series of deafening explosions took place. Zhou Di and Huang Fuju's flesh, martial arts, and will unleashed a strong resistance to resist the purple crystal pieces that kept surging at them. It was reasonable for it to happen. However, the timing was too perfect. Everything that Qin Nan and his crew had been hiding was exposed just like that. It was like a peerless ray of light that swept across the heavens and earth. This, Eternal Night Heaven Highness, who had calmed down a little, and the authorities of the various factions were shocked when they saw the scene in front of them. In fact, even his soul was trembling. How is this possible? Tang Qingshan seemed to have sensed something. He raised his head and his eyes widened. Even with his intelligence, he was unable to maintain his composure at this moment. Impenetrable sacred flesh, art of the immortal demon, Zhou Di's will, and Huang Fuju's will. Zhou Di and Huang Fuju were reincarnated into this young man before my master was reincarnated? Tang Qingshan's hair stood on its end. This scene was simply too horrifying. These were three supreme heavenly venerables. In that era there were three supreme giants who stood at the pinnacle of the world. No wonder ruler Can Lang and the other two demons went to help Qin Nan. No wonder the sixth immortal was defeated by Qin Nan. No wonder Qin Nan was able to retrieve Huang Fuju's belongings from the celestial tree. Three Supreme Highnesses reincarnated at the same time. That's three Supreme Highnesses reincarnated at the same time. If I can get my hands on them, Eternal Night Heaven Highness's heart trembled vigorously. The doubts that he had previously were all answered. He also thought of a possibility. He could not tell if he was excited, terrified, or astounded. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Even though the purple crystal pieces were under great resistance, they still resisted stubbornly and entered Qin Nan's mind. A few moments later, they all entered Qin Nan's mind and formed a purple crystal with the shape of a rhombus. The crystal began to crack as it was on the verge of shattering. On top of it, the chaotic purple vortex around Qin Nan suddenly unleashed countless lightning bolts. Mysterious runes the size of a palm floated out of it and headed straight for Qin Nan. Bang! The impenetrable sacred flesh, the art of the immortal demon, and the illusionary figures of Zhou Di and Huang Fuju emitted a brilliant glow, as if they were extremely resistant to the symbols. They could not accept them at all. Bang bang bang! A battle that was different from the rest had begun. The power involved in this battle was not very powerful. However, the collisions between them were like torrential gales that engulfed the entire region, giving rise to many abnormal signs. Many of the big shots felt their hearts skip a beat. Qin Nan, who was in the middle of the battle, felt like he was being torn apart like never before. His will became chaotic as he let out a heart-wrenching cry. Soon, the ancient and mysterious runes unleashed a tremendous force, attracting the lightning in the surroundings toward them, which formed into lightning runes that collided with Qin Nan's figure. The heavens and earth collapsed. The sun and moon lost their brilliance. The illusionary figures of Zhou Di and Huang Fuju, the impenetrable sacred flesh, and the art of the immortal demon suffered a great blow. The former shuddered while the latter dimmed. It was obvious that they were no longer able to defend themselves. Once the runes merge with Qin Nan, he will be the reincarnation of Zhangji. Empress Feiyue murmured upon seeing this. However, in the nick of time, a tremendous change took place inside Qin Nan's body. A terrifying aura burst out from his soul. Even Zhou Xuandao, who had yet to recover from the shock, felt his heart skipping a beat. The 9 dragons seal that had been silent all this time suddenly emitted a brilliant glow. An immature, yet furious, oppressive voice exploded like a clap of thunder. Trying to reincarnate into his body with the force of the Tao tribulation? Piss off! Bang! An indescribable force burst out from Qin Nan's soul like a tsunami that had been dormant for tens of thousands of years. Following it, a shocking sight took place. The purple crystal pieces in Qin Nan's divine sense and the purple glowing monarch robe on his body were knocked out. The purple thunderous vortex surrounding Qin Nan's figure rose into the air, as the countless mysterious runes that were floating within it were withdrawn, no longer surging toward Qin Nan. This Zhou Xuandao, Moxie, Demon Emperor Wutian, Tang Qingshan, and the rest of the authorities were stunned. What was going on? Wasn't Qin Nan awakening his past life? In addition to that, the crimson glow encapsulating Qin Nan's figure shuddered violently for a few moments, before it finally left Qin Nan's body and landed on another person's figure at lightning speed. Chapter 2236. Following it, a purple lightning vortex appeared around Empress Feiyue and spread across 100,000 li. The magnificent figure on the 10 moons deep in the sky performed another hand seal. A mystical purple glow descended upon Empress Feiyue at a shocking pace and turned into a purple monarch intent. A terrifying aura burst out of her body and shook the whole place. Tsang. Tsang has reincarnated into Empress Feiyue's body? Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huangyun ruler, Li Pasheng, and the rest of the authorities were dumbfounded. It felt like everything before them had been turned upside down. This scene was simply too inconceivable. Everyone knew that when a powerful existence was on the verge of death, they would allow their soul and other things to be reincarnated in advance. No one knew who they would reincarnate into. It was up to fate to decide. Even Zhou Di and Huang Fuju could only reincarnate into the same person. But now, Tsang's reincarnation was able to do whatever he wanted as he pleased? Meanwhile, Moxie, Demon Emperor Wutian, and the ancient taboo widened their eyes. They finally collected their thoughts after some time. They were overjoyed. Ha ha ha, I didn't expect Empress Feiyue to be the reincarnation in the end. Moxie burst out laughing. If Tsang was reincarnated into Qin Nan's body, it would be a battle between the three Supreme Highnesses. Even if he tried his best to convince Qin Nan to merge with Qin Nan's body, he had no idea who Qin Nan would become in the end. However, it was a different story for Empress Feiyue. Emosia was well aware of the relationship between her and Qin Nan. Now that fate was playing a trick on them, or perhaps it was Tsang's scheme, they had become mortal enemies. When that happened, Qin Nan would have no choice but to "My lord is wise, my lord is wise." The ancient taboo was extremely excited. It kept kowtowing. If Qin Nan suddenly became its master, it was most likely going to die. Now that its master had reincarnated into Empress Feiyue's body, the outcome was completely different. Leaving aside the relationship between Empress Feiyue and Qin Nan, Empress Feiyue had also mastered the art of 10 lifetimes. She was now in the greater success stage of the ruler realm. She was not far away from becoming the strongest ruler realm. With master's skill and such a fine body, he would definitely become the #1 sovereign, stabilize the position of celestial, and unify the 9 heavens. Just now, how did that young man block my master? Only Tang Qingshan had an awful look on his face. Zhou Di and Huang Fuju's weak will could not hold on any longer. Qin Nan, are you okay? What happened just now? Why did Tsang reincarnate into Empress Feiyue? Progenitor Mingqiu, Progenitor Ling Wang, Ruler Green Jade, and the rest of the authorities quickly reacted. They landed beside Qin Nan and fired wisps of pure energy into Qin Nan's body. What did you say? Qin Nan's mind was in a mess, but he immediately sobered up after hearing the words. He glanced forward. With a single glance, his figure began to tremble slightly. It felt like a giant hand had reached out from nowhere and grabbed his throat. He felt like he was suffocating. At this moment all was silent. Everyone placed their attention on Empress Feiyue. Empress Feiyue's light blue eyes flickered sharply after a slight startle. She had fully utilized the art of 10 lifetimes. 9 figures appeared behind her too. Tsang, are you trying to possess me by force? Empress Feiyue summoned an ancient sword from the rift. She executed a peerless sword art and slashed forward. A terrifying sword intent burst out and collided with the blood-red glow and the lightning vortex. She rarely had other emotions in her life, but she was a little angry now. Bang bang bang! A series of explosions took place. Qin Nan, calm down. Zhou Xuandao yelled, something doesn't feel right. Tsang was trying to reincarnate into you, but the 9 dragons seal stopped him, so he reincarnated into Empress Feiyue's body instead. Qin Nan was startled. He immediately thought of something and said, "You're saying?" Zhou Xuandao nodded and said, "That's right, the reincarnation is determined by fate. If you're really Tsang's reincarnation, the 9 dragons seal won't be able to stop it, and Tsang won't be able to go against fate and decide who to reincarnate into. In my opinion, it's very likely that Tsang isn't reincarnating, but possessing someone else's body. Therefore, it can reincarnate into whomever it wants." This can also explain why Tsang's reincarnation, this time would produce 10 blood moons, giving rise to such a shocking scene. Qin Nan immediately came to a realization after hearing the words. Tsang, how ruthless of you! Qin Nan's heart was filled with murderous intent. It was very likely that Tang Qingshan was forcibly reincarnated into the spirit of the thoughtless Heavenly Highness too. However, it's only my speculation. I can't say for sure yet. Zhou Xuandao added, either way, what you need to do now is to use the 9 Dragons seal to stop Tsang from reincarnating into Empress Feiyue's body. If our speculation is right, Tsang won't succeed. Qin Nan immediately calmed his thoughts and transmitted his thoughts to the 9 Dragons seal. A few moments later, the 9 Dragons seal emitted a faint glow. It was no longer as mischievous as before. It was trying to reassure Qin Nan that it knew what it was doing. Feiyue. Qin Nan clenched his fists as he stared at the sight ahead. It was also at this moment that the 10 moons in the sky suddenly underwent an earth-shattering change. The 10 magnificent figures sitting with their legs crossed no longer existed. They were replaced by giant, entirely different runes. The color of the moons changed tremendously too. They were as blue as the ocean. The authorities raised their heads when they noticed something. Following it, each of the giant mysterious runes unleashed a tremendous glow and sprang at the ground of the 30-second small immortal realm. They were extremely quick. They collided with one another in the air within the blink of an eye. Chapter 2237. It was 30 kilometers tall and over 10 kilometers wide, and it was divided into a total of 6 levels. It was constructed from some sort of glass, and its surface was even inscribed with numerous mysterious talismans, markings, and ancient drawings. It emanated immortal radiance repeatedly and was filled with an ancient aura. However, it did not emit any oppressive might. Moreover, in this chaotic world, it was like a clear stream. With a single glance at it, one would feel tranquil and peaceful. At its main entrance, there was a plaque with 4 words written on it. Zening Godly Palace. Zening Godly Palace? Zening. Zening. Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, and the rest of the authorities were astounded when they recalled something. There were 4 Supreme Highnesses in the ancient era, Tsang Zhou Huang Fuju, and the 4th one was Yi Zhaoxian. Yi Zhaoxian had also invented the extraordinary Tao of Rules. He even controlled the space-time boulder and mastered the mysterious Tao of space-time. Unlike the other 3, Yi Zhaoxian had kept a low profile. He had never established his own faction or nurtured any immortals until the ancient war broke out. He only recruited 5 successors. Yi Zhaoxian was the only one who had always lived in the Blue Dome. The palace he had built on the Blue Dome was the Zening Godly Palace. Eternal Night Heaven Highness and the authorities of various factions had been searching for the Blue Dome to achieve the Supreme Highness Realm and the Heaven Highness Realm. They had spent a lot of effort searching for the Zening Godly Palace. However, they did not expect the Zening Godly Palace would show up on the moon on the day Tsang was reincarnated. Could it be that Yi Zhaoxian's reincarnation was about to reappear in the world? Yi Zhaoxian had teamed up with Tsang after the ancient war? Mo Xie, Demon Emperor Wutian, Zhou Xuandao, and even Tang Qingshan and the ancient taboo were astounded. They all knew Yi Zhaoxian's character very well. Although he did not stand on any side and had always been neutral, he did not like Tsang. Back then, in order to kill Zhou Di, Tsang had looked for Huang Fuju and Yi Zhaoxian many times, giving them great benefits. The former took advantage of it, but the latter refused without even seeing it. This era has completely changed. Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, and the others were extremely excited. The reincarnation of the 4 Supreme Heavenly Venerates was an unprecedented opportunity for them. Hurry up and get the Heaven Emperor Orb. We'll split into 2 groups and keep an eye on Empress Feiyue. If she successfully reincarnates, we'll team up with the other factions and take her down. The rest of you will follow me into Zening Divine Palace. The authorities of various factions reacted almost instantly. They immediately transmitted their thoughts and executed all kinds of method. Eternal darkness. Eternal Night Empyrean also brazenly attacked. The 32nd small immortal realm was immersed in the flames of war once again after a brief period of peace. Qin Nan, be careful. Ancestor Minchu and the rest of the authorities decisively joined the battle after giving their advice. They initially had great plans for Tsang's reincarnation, but they had no choice but to give up on it under the circumstances. Wu Tian, you, Canlang, and the others will go into the palace and see what's going on. I have to stay here to protect my master. Moxie immediately said. Got it. Demon Emperor Wu Tian sprang into the sky with a strong demonic intent. His appearance also caused many people's pupils to shrink rapidly. Meanwhile, on Empress Feiyue's side, the shocking sword intent she had unleashed was unable to shatter the purple glow and the mysterious runes. In the end, all the mysterious runes entered her body. Meanwhile, the Nine Dragons seal in Qin Nan's soul unleashed a terrifying force and entered Empress Feiyue's body. Is that the force? Tang Qingshan fixed his eyes on the scene. Qin Nan clenched his fists even tighter. His heart was in his throat. He did not even bother looking at the Zening godly palace. He could not care less about it. Meanwhile, in Empress Feiyue's divine sense, apart from the ancient boulder that was formed by the power of 10 lifetimes and the book spirit of the wordless heavenly scripture, there was also a purple crystal. On top of it, the color of her divine sense was still turning red. Song, don't waste your time. You won't be able to possess me. Empress Feiyue said coldly, if you insist, I'll destroy you too. Following her words, a blood-red glow descended from nowhere and slowly turned into an illusionary figure. Your Dao heart is quite firm. Any other ruler of Dao would be a little scared of me, but I can't sense any fear in your heart. I can feel your determination instead. The illusionary figure spoke. His voice was a little hoarse, yet pleasant to the ears. Empress Feiyue did not want to waste her time talking to him. The boulder in her divine sense immediately emitted a tremendous glow. A strong soul force burst out of her soul too. No matter who it was impossible for them to possess her body. You don't have to do that. The man you care about has already used the 9 Dragons seal. The illusionary figure said calmly, besides, I've never thought about possessing your body. Empress Feiyue remained unmoved. However, the book spirit in her divine sense said disdainfully, Song, are you trying to trick a kid? The voice was pleasant and a little immature. The illusionary figure shrugged and said, the wordless heavenly scripture. Kids shouldn't interrupt when adults are talking. Otherwise, I'll make you suffer. His tone was calm and even a little gentle, yet the book spirit shivered in fear. The illusionary figure added, there's not much time left. I'll make it short. I believe most factions in this era have no idea that I married Fairy Qiangyue when I became a Heaven Highness and gave birth to a daughter. You must know since you have the wordless heavenly scripture. Empress Feiyue, who had been silent for a long time, said coldly, you suffered a great calamity when you were trying to become a heaven monarch. Your daughter died when she was only 10 years old. Are you trying to tell me that I'm the reincarnation of your daughter? The illusionary figure chuckled. That's right, that's the truth. The so-called fate is just like this. It will be as cruel as it is disgusting. Chapter 2238. Empress Feiyue said expressionlessly, I've never had a 10-year-old child in my past life. Besides, even if I've awakened your daughter's memories, it must be your doing too. Your words and schemes are of no use to me, said Qin Lai coldly. The illusionary figure shrugged and said, you think too highly of me. I might be a supreme highness in the past, but Jodi's final attack almost killed me. I don't have the strength to set up such a great plan. It's just a great gift that disgusting fate has given me." His voice suddenly turned eerie, as if the mystical heavens were whispering, "Have you never wondered why you are so talented? You were only a 10th grade Huang-ranked martial spirit back in the Kanglan continent. You were able to invent the art of 3 lifetimes before reaching the martial dominator realm. Don't you know how powerful the art of 3 lifetimes is? In the primary upper realm, it only took you 1,000 years to improve the art of 3 lifetimes and complete the art of 10 lifetimes. Don't you think it strange?" The words exploded in Empress Feiyue's divine sense like a series of claps of thunder. Empress Feiyue's icy blue eyes widened slightly. The voice of the illusory figure changed again. It now sounded like an old man who was describing his past. "Back when I became a celestial venerate, I had already refined 33 celestial emperor pearls, which corresponded to 33 small celestial realms. I became the son of origin. How could my daughter be ordinary? Qiangyue was a heaven highness too, but she was pregnant for 10 years. Her cultivation dropped to the ruler realm before she gave birth to her daughter. That day, if I didn't prepare everything in time, her life would be in danger. I'll say something shameless, but my daughter has inherited all of my talents and even my source strength. If she can grow up, no one will be able to compare to her." He yelled at the end, as if he was unwilling to accept the fact that his daughter had died when she was 10 years old. His tone soon calmed down as he continued, "So, I can only let her reincarnate. Her reincarnation is indeed extraordinary. Before you awakened any of your memories, her terrifying talent was already influencing you, allowing you to walk step by step to where you are today. Perhaps you still insist that in your many previous lives, there was not a single 10-year-old child. However, have you ever thought that from the beginning to the end, there are a total of 11 lifetimes?" The last few words were like endless darkness that was tainted with dawn. He didn't stop there. His tone became playful as he said, "Originally, when you became a ruler, you were supposed to awaken my daughter's memories. However, I never expected that you would complete the art of 10 lifetimes before that. This technique is extremely heaven-defying and involves the cycle of reincarnation. It coincidentally restrains her memories. Originally, in this life, you would never awaken her memories. However, as your father in your first life, how could I watch this happen?" Empress Feiyue's figure tensed. Her intellect was superhuman, and her ability to calculate was heaven-defying. Therefore, she understood almost instantly that everything that Tsang said was logical. According to Tsang, from the beginning to the end, there were a total of 11 lifetimes. Tsang's daughter was born in the beginning, which meant she was in her first life. She was currently in her 10th life. Why did the memories of her first life not awaken in her second, third, fourth, and so on? Why did she only awaken them in her 10th life? The reason was simple. The strongest cultivator from her second to 9th life was only in the master realm. Most of them were still peerless rulers. They had yet to achieve the ruler realm. The memories of her first life were like a seal. She would only awaken them after reaching a certain level. It was a lot more complicated than awakening the memories of other people's past lives. For example, Qin Nan's past life was Zhou Di and Huang Fuju. It was not related to his second or third life, however. The reason for such a situation was most likely because of what Tsang had done back then, as well as his daughter herself, were simply too heaven-defying. Empress Feiyue's blue eyes soon returned to normal. She said coldly, "It doesn't matter even if what you said is true. You only asked me to awaken your daughter's memories, so you can use me to deal with Qin Nan. You can forget about it now." The illusionary figure chuckled. "That's right, I'm using you to deal with Qin Nan. I know you won't side with me even if you awaken my daughter's memories because you have a strong will. Similarly, I didn't treat my daughter well in the past either. Even I am afraid of my daughter's talent. I am very afraid of it. That's why, before my grand plan succeeded, I didn't give her any care. Instead, I didn't allow her to like martial arts and cultivation. I sealed all of her meridians, sea of consciousness and soul. But what difference would it make? What would Qin Nan think if he knew about it? What would Bai Zhongxing and the others, the undying cycle mountain, and the ownerless heaven pattern think of you? He lowered his voice with an evil grin. Most importantly, I'm afraid you won't have a choice when the time comes. Bang! Following the words, the power of the 9 dragons' seal entered Empress Feiyue's body and burst out like a great flood, surging at the illusionary figure. At that instant, the illusionary figure, the blood-red pillar, the purple monarch robe, the vortex around Empress Feiyue, and the rest broke free from her body just like what happened to Qin Nan. It worked. Seeing this, Qin Nan was overjoyed, as if the boulder in his heart had been lifted. Whoosh! However, following 4 chimes, countless runes spread under Empress Feiyue's feet and formed illusionary dragons. The 8 dragons pattern appeared after the chimes. Qin Nan was startled. Is she awakening her past life? Zhou Xuandao was astounded too. Did Empress Feiyue have other past lives? Meanwhile, a purple crystal in Empress Feiyue's divine sense was covered in cracks. It eventually broke into pieces and turned into a formidable memory surging into her mind. Soul and heart. Empress Feiyue performed a hand seal. She did not want to be affected by the memories. Following it, the scenery before her changed. Chapter 2239. Meanwhile, the blood-red light pillars, purple emperor robes, chaotic lightning vortexes, and other things landed on the ancient taboo at a shocking pace. The ancient taboo shuddered. It let out a roar that echoed across the place. What's going on? Did Tsang reincarnate into Empress Feiyue's body again? Why is Empress Feiyue awakening the rare phenomena of her past life again? The authorities who were looking at the orbs of the Heaven Monarch were dumbfounded. They were utterly confused by the current situation. Qin Nan, Tsang is now possessing the ancient taboo. He's at his weakest. Kill him now! Zhou Xuandao yelled. Skystride blow. Qin Nan quickly collected his thoughts. He appeared above the ancient taboo and slashed at it with his saber. Fellow cultivators, Tsang has possessed the ancient taboo. Let's attack him now. Qin Nan quickly transmitted his thoughts to Moxie and the others. What? The eyes of Moxie and the others flickered with astonishment. However, they quickly collected their thoughts and unleashed their auras into the clouds. The demonic intent inside Mo Xie's body, in particular, was as vast as the ocean. Even though his cultivation was only in the peak master realm, his strength was comparable to a peak ruler realm cultivator. Taishao Moon Transformation Art. Tang Qingshan dashed out of the barrier formed by the blood-red runes and pointed at it. At that instant, a formidable force of the rules rose above the ancient taboo. It turned into the illusionary figure of a purple moon that expanded in all directions. Qin Nan's saber intents only produced a series of explosions when they collided with the moon. However, Qin Nan could sense that Tang Qingshan's power was significantly weaker than before. It was obvious that Thoughtful Heavens had consumed a lot of its energy. It could not hold on any longer. Something isn't right. The eyes of Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, and the rest of the authorities flickered. Their original plan was immediately changed. The former split into 3. He went after the ancient taboo and the others while competing for the orb of the Heaven Emperor. The leaders of the Wang family and the Li family immediately split into 2 groups, as did the other forces. The flames in the ancient taboo's eyes turned purple gold. A terrifying pressure, as well as an ancient aura, rose from his body. Tsang possessed this loyal and devoted subordinate and did not spend much effort at all. However, as Zhou Xuandao had said, He was very weak right now. All the power he could unleash, apart from the powerful aura, was the aura of the primordial taboo. He couldn't unleash battle prowess comparable to a celestial venerable with the body of Tang Qingshan like celestial sovereign Wu Wang. After all, he had joined forces with Yi Zhaoxian and used a method that was close to rebirth to return to this world. The price they had to pay was quite huge. We've only just come out, yet we're already in such a dangerous situation. The ancient taboo did not feel any pressure when he saw the situation before him. He looked at Qin Nan instead. I believe you're curious why Empress Feiyue has the memories of her past life? I'll be honest with you, Empress Feiyue is my daughter's reincarnation. The ancient taboo said gently like a kind elder. Empress Feiyue is Tsang's daughter's reincarnation? These words were like a sudden clap of thunder, causing the hearts of many authorities to tremble violently. It's her. Moxie, Zhou Xuandao, and Eternal Knight Heaven Highness were astounded. They had a deep impression of Tsang's daughter. The talents that she had unintentionally displayed had taken everyone by surprise. Qin Nan's eyes widened. He did not expect the situation to take such a turn. Speaking of which, fate is really a prank. I didn't expect my daughter's reincarnation to care so much about you when she finally showed up in this world. The ancient taboo shook his head and said with a smile, however, I don't think it's that bad. If you can change your mind and marry my daughter, it's not impossible. Unfortunately, that's not going to happen. How could a mere woman change your mind? The ancient taboo said in a self-mocking tone. Qin Nan's expression remained calm. He unleashed the power in his body and merged it with the heaven-shattering saber. It buzzed vigorously with a magnificent saber intent. Don't be mad, I didn't mean to mock you. We should always prioritize our plans. We can give up everything to achieve our goals. The ancient taboo smiled. He then faced the murderous aura and the authorities and said loudly, I've just shown up, so I won't be greeting you all. There's still plenty of time in the future. I'll visit you one by one and ask for your advice. I'll be leaving first. Following it, Tang Qingshan immediately performed a hand seal. One of the 5 orbs of the Heaven Emperor emitted a brilliant glow and flew toward them at a shocking pace. A great force burst out of it and sucked them into it. Crap! Many authorities were startled, but they were too late. Don't you dare run away! Mo Xie, Mingchu progenitor, and the rest of the authorities came forward and crushed the orb of the Heaven Emperor. At this critical moment, ancient runes suddenly shot out from the 10 ancient moons in the sky. They landed on the Celestial Emperor's pearl at an indescribable speed and gathered together, turning into a shocking invisible ripple. Whoosh! The orb of the Heaven Emperor vanished into thin air. The authorities immediately sensed that the orb of the Heaven Emperor's aura was no longer in the 30-second small immortal realm. It was obvious that Tsang already knew he would be in great danger when he returned to the world. He had long prepared for it. Sigh, as I thought. Zhou Xuandao let out a sigh. He did not have high hopes of capturing Tsang's reincarnation, not to mention that Tsang was not reincarnated. He was in a state close to being reborn. It was quite terrifying to be in such a state. In comparison to his reincarnation, Tsang should have retained most of his memories, including the experiences, strategies, and plans he had in the past. Chapter 2240. It seems like Tsang is going to rise in the primary upper realm in no time. Eternal Knight Heaven Highness, Huang Yun Ruler, and the authorities of various factions shared the same thought when they realized what was going on. Even though it was a pity that they did not manage to suppress Tsang, it was still a good thing for them. If Tsang wanted to regain his glory, he would have to become a ruler of Tao and achieve the Heaven Highness realm. They would be able to team up with him to resolve the most awkward problem of the era. Get the orb of the Heaven Emperor. The authorities quickly made their moves. Qin Nan clenched his fists before loosening his grip. He decided to lend ancestor Mingqiu and the others a hand too. Half an hour later, the battles finally came to an end. Eternal Night Heaven Highness claimed one orb of the Heaven Emperor, the Wang clan and the Li clan claimed one each, the Sky Tai Huang sect, the Wu clan, and the Zheng clan claimed one each. The 32nd small immortal realm finally calmed down. The cultivators in the 31st and 33rd small immortal realms let out relieved sighs. Come, let's head to the Zening Godly Palace. Eternal Night Heaven Highness and the rest of the authorities glanced at Empress Feiyue and made their moves. Master, don't worry too much. With Empress Feiyue's strength, even if she has awakened the memories of Tsang's daughter, she will still be able to stay true to herself, just like you. Moxie said. Thanks. Qin Nan nodded. He glanced at Empress Feiyue's glamorous figure. It did not take him long to awaken Zhoudi's memories, but Empress Feiyue had yet to awaken them. It was likely that the memories she had awakened were still intact. Master, I'll keep an eye on Empress Feiyue for you. You can head to the Zening Godly Palace to take a look. You might find something useful there, Moxie said respectfully, as if everything he did was for Qin Nan's sake. That won't be necessary. Qin Nan said calmly. Moxie's eyes glittered. He withdrew to the side and waited patiently with Qin Nan. The situation. Zhou Xuandao shook his head when he saw this from within his soul. The current situation was truly chaotic. What would happen in the end? He had no idea at all. At this moment, the Zening Divine Palace floating in the sky suddenly trembled violently. The light it emitted became dozens of times more dazzling. It was incomparably resplendent like an ancient sun. In addition to it, faint voices echoed in every corner of the 32nd small immortal realm, as if several ancient sages had woken up from their slumber and were teaching the people the great Tao. Boom! Boom! Following a series of shocking explosions, Eternal Night Heaven Highness, Royal Cloud Ruler, and the rest of the authorities that had entered Zening's godly palace were knocked flying as if they had received a great blow. Qin Nan raised his head and saw that everyone's faces were filled with shock. Wu Tian, Ken Lang, what happened? Mo Xie asked solemnly. Master. Yi Zhaoxian, he the seventh immortal, Demon Emperor Wu Tian's voice began to tremble. It was as shocking as when he learned that Qin Nan was the reincarnation of Tsang Ji. Calm down. What's wrong with Yi Zhaoxian? Mo Xie groaned with a hint of Tao. Following it, he and Qin Nan saw a figure walking out from the entrance of Zening's godly palace at a steady pace. The figure's face soon appeared in front of them. It was a young man with sharp brows and bright eyes. His skin was fair, and he was wearing a blue robe with 8 trigrams. His pitch-black hair reached his ankles, giving him an indescribable otherworldly appearance. The young man's aura was clearly only in the peerless ruler realm, yet for some reason, everyone felt like they had become vulgar before him, as if they were tainted by the mundane world. Yi Zhaoxian's true self? Mo Xie blurted out. His heart was in great astonishment. The 4 Supreme Highnesses had all fallen in the battle in the ancient times. Zhou Di and Huang Fuju had no choice but to reincarnate. Tsang was also in a strange state. However, this was Yi Zhaoxian's true self? What? Qin Nan's heart skipped a beat. The place fell silent. Only the sound of the wind and breathing could be heard. Yi Zhaoxian calmly scanned the crowd and paused on Qin Nan's figure for a brief moment, before she withdrew her gaze and performed a hand seal. Tao of time, trace back to the beginning. Yi Zhaoxian performed a series of hand seals as wisps of white mist burst out of his body. Everyone clearly sensed that a few breaths had passed, yet it felt like a few days had passed. Even the flow of time was accelerated. Bang! After an unknown period of time, it was as if some primordial seal in Yi Zhaoxian's body had been broken. His aura began to soar into the clouds. 9 heavens supreme. Peak 9 heavens supreme. Master realm. Peak master realm. His aura had reached the peak ruler realm in just a brief moment. His aura was emitting ripples of the power of rules. It was utterly shocking. On top of it, the speed of his aura did not stop. It was still moving forward. Is this the best I can do? After a while, Yi Zhaoxian muttered to himself and formed a hand seal in reverse. The aura in his body no longer soared, but instead rapidly decreased. It slowly came to a stop when he reached the early stage of the ruler realm. Yi Zhaoxian withdrew his hand seal and let out a puff of white mist. He looked even more otherworldly. Fellow cultivators, I'm very lucky. I managed to keep my flesh even after dying once. I was reborn in this world. Yi Zhaoxian glanced at the crowd. He said without an imperious or friendly tone, I have two things to say. Firstly, I won't team up with anyone. I'm no longer in contact with Song. As long as no one dares to provoke me or stand in my way, I won't attack any faction. Don't worry, there's no need to waste your time worrying about me. Secondly, he paused for a moment before he continued, I've observed everyone's cultivation and the situation of this world. I believe the great battle in the ancient times has left a great impact on this world. I'm partly responsible for it. Therefore, to make up for the process and for myself, I'm planning to do it on the first day of the month. I'll invite everyone in the greater success stage and above to visit the Zening Godly Palace on the first day of next month. I'll bring you to the Blue Dome to establish a place for you to achieve the Heaven Highness realm. Chapter 2241. Since the ancient battle, the secondary lower realm had suffered a great loss, thus there was no place to achieve the Heaven Highness realm, let alone the Supreme Highness realm. Many factions had come up with all kinds of ideas. Tens of thousands of years had passed. The Sherdao tribe, the Mumin sect, and the Zheng clan wanted to bring their souls back to the ancient times. Some other factions had been conducting experiments in secret. However, most of the other factions had their eyes fixed on Green Sky Dome. Unbeknownst to the countless cultivators in the primary upper realm, these sovereigns would enter the Blue Dome realm every once in a while to explore together. After so many years, he had never succeeded. That was because the Blue Dome was too terrifying. They would feel how minuscule they were whenever they set foot in it. If Qin Nan or Tsang were to tell them to explore the Blue Dome together, they would not react in such a way, but Yi Zhaoxian was different. He was the most low-key Supreme Highness among the 4 Supreme Highnesses, yet he had been staying in the Blue Dome. His understanding of Qing Qiong was utterly not something they could compare to. As I thought, we still have to go to the Blue Dome? The authorities of the Mumin sect and the Zheng clan were startled. The authority of the Sherdao tribe clenched his fists. Blue veins were popping out. In addition to them, Eternal Night Heaven Highness wore a dark expression too. He suddenly realized that his brilliance in the heavens and earth was dimming as more and more supreme heavenly venerates showed up. Even though no one could challenge his position as the strongest cultivator in the primary lower realm, if Yi Zhaoxian and the rest of the authorities actually found a place to achieve the Heaven Highness realm, then what's the Blue Dome? Qin Nan could not help but transmit his voice. My master, in the ancient times, the Blue Dome referred to the Pure Land of the Outer Realm, Mo Xie explained. Mo Xie explained, this place is not in the primary upper realm. We need to go to the spacetime battlefield and cross the barrier of the entire primary upper realm to reach here. Furthermore, this place is extremely mysterious. There are all sorts of terrifying things on it, such as sovereign realm demonic beasts, restrictive spells, killing traps, and so on. You can see them everywhere. If you go deeper, you will find celestial exalts and even supreme exalts. Back then, you, Tsang, Zhou Di, and Yi Zhaoxian worked together to explore this place, but failed to uncover its secrets. You and them both believe that after the Blue Dome is the world beyond, a world that is even vaster than the great upper realm. Qin Nan was shocked. This was the first time he had heard of this. However, on second thought, it was reasonable for the mysterious 72 sacred areas of the heavens and earth, and the mysterious Tao-seeking land, to have the blue dome. Could it be that the 9-dragon stone seal came from the blue dome? The thought crossed Qin Nan's mind. According to the pattern spirit, the 9-dragon stone seal was something that the 4 supreme highnesses were after. Qin Nan, there's one more thing. Not long after Zhou Di, Huang Fuju, and the others finished exploring the blue dome, the ancient war broke out. Zhou Xuandao said calmly. Is it related to the blue dome too? Qin Nan was startled. Bai Zhongxing once mentioned that he had a feeling that there was more to the ancient war. Could it be that the secret was inside the blue dome? That's all I have to say. From today onward, the 32nd small immortal realm belongs to me. If anyone dares to enter it recklessly, they will be treated as my enemy. Leave now, Yi Zhaoxian said. A single word had determined the fate of a realm. The majesty of a transcendent empyrean was vividly displayed. Eternal Night Heaven Highness was infuriated. He chuckled and said, Does it mean that the 32nd small immortal realm is yours just because you said so? What if I don't agree to it? Huang Yun ruler and the authorities raised their brows. Their eyes flickered with disdain. It seemed like Eternal Night was completely corrupted by the compliments he had received over the years. Yi Zhaoxian glanced at him and said, Do you have a death wish? Bang! A wisp of wool slashed at Eternal Night Heaven Highness' forehead like a peerless sword. Eternal Night Heaven Highness knew that the will would not be able to harm him, but for some reason, he could not help but feel a chill in his heart. If Senior Yi says so, we'll be leaving. Huang Yun ruler and the rest of the authorities brought their fists together and flew into the sky. Many factions had benefited greatly from the appearance of the Sky God Palace and Zening Godly Palace. Only a few factions did not benefit from it. It was meaningless for them to stay any longer. They should return on the first day of the next month. Eternal Night Heaven Highness wore a displeased expression. It felt like something was stuck in his heart. He would not feel good if he could not vent it out. I'm just kidding. Senior Yi, don't take it seriously. Eternal Night Heaven Highness wore a fake smile and disappeared into the rift. The rest of you should leave too. Yi Zhaoxian glanced at Emo Xie and the others, as well as Ancestor Mingqiu and the others. Senior Yi, Moxie remained still. Don't worry, I won't hurt him, Yi Zhaoxian said calmly. She was referring to Qin Nan. All right, Master, we'll stay in the 31st small immortal realm. Just give us the order if you need anything. When Emo Xie and the others saw this, they gave him some instructions before turning around and flying away. Time has changed. Things are still the same, but people have changed. Are you willing to have a drink with me in the palace? Yi Zhaoxian looked at Qin Nan and asked. Her tone was different from before. It was no longer as calm and emotionless. Qin Nan nodded. He had something to ask too. Qin Nan followed Yi Zhaoxian into Zening's godly palace. Qin Nan's eyes flickered with astonishment as soon as they entered the palace. It was not because the palace was powerful, but because it was too simple. Mountains and rivers, a wooden hut in a courtyard, everything was so ordinary. Yi Zhaoxian took out 3 wooden chairs and a pot of tea, filling each of them. Qin Nan asked curiously, Senior Yi, is there anyone else? Yi Zhaoxian chuckled and said, Don't call me Senior Yi, it feels weird. This is the 3rd cup. He did not finish the sentence. Qin Nan sensed a ripple in his soul as Zhou Xuandao's illusionary figure appeared. Zhou Xuandao did not accept the cup of tea. He said coldly, So Senior Yi still remembers me. Yi Zhaoxian took a sip of the tea and said, Elder Zhou, I know you're not happy about it. Feel free to ask. Chapter 2242. Qin Nan's eyes sharpened. Yi Zhaoxian straightened her face and said, Elder Zhou, I didn't fight or do anything in the past. I only walked my own path. I'm still the same now. Nothing has changed. I teamed up with Tsang at the last moment because I had no choice. If it wasn't for Tsang's help, I wouldn't have been able to be reincarnated. Tsang didn't want to be reincarnated. He wanted to carry out his plan better, and so did I. Zhou Xuandao waved his hand and said with a sigh, "Actually, I don't have the right to be angry. You and I just happened to meet each other once. I'm not related to you, and neither are you related to me. It's your business what you want to do." Yi Zhaoxian took a sip of tea without saying a word. They might seem close in the past, but there was still a gap between them. Qin Nan frowned and said, "Qian, Cultivator Yi, may I ask what Tsang's plan is? What was the cause of the Great War in ancient times?" Yi Zhaoxian's arm shuddered slightly before she said, "It doesn't matter if I tell you. You should know that Tsang had already become the Son of Origin when he was in the Heaven Highness realm. Therefore, Tsang wanted to become the Master of Origin after he became a Supreme Highness. If he succeeded, he would truly be the strongest cultivator. Therefore, Zhou Di started a war at the crucial moment." Qin Nan was startled. This ancient riddle was actually so simple? Yi Zhaoxian smiled and said, "Don't you think it's too simple? However, on the surface everything is that simple. Tsang and Zhou Di are like fire and water. Neither of them is willing to let the other become the strongest cultivator in the primary upper realm. They have been fighting for countless years. There has to be a winner. However, I personally feel that there's a deeper reason behind it. There's one thing that I don't mind telling you. When the four of us joined forces to explore the Blue Dome, a great change occurred to the immortal divine steel when we entered its depths." Qin Nan was puzzled. What is this Zhu immortal divine steel? Is it related to the 10 immortals? Yi Zhaoxian was stunned. "You don't know?" Zhou Xuandao grinned and said, "Senior Yi, he might be a master of Dao now, and he has awakened Zhou Di and Huang Fuju, but there are many things he doesn't know. Qin Nan, the so-called godly tablet of the immortals is indeed related to the 10 immortals. At the beginning of the world, martial arts flourished. Various races existed side by side, and all kinds of laws appeared. After tens of thousands of years of evolution, the celestial lords appeared. In order to find the legendary supreme heavenly venerate realm, these heavenly venerates worked together to break through the barrier of the primary upper realm and discovered the Blue Dome for the first time. They also discovered the godly tablet of the immortals at the same time." Qin Nan listened quietly. He began to picture the scenes in his mind according to the words. He clearly knew that the beginning of the world that Zhou Xuandao mentioned was an era before the four supreme heavenly venerate. Inside the Green Dome, there are countless terrifying things. Every step is filled with killing intent. Only the immortal divine monument is an exception. Not only is it not hostile to cultivators, it even saved the first batch of celestial venerables. The godly tablet of the immortals told the heaven venerates that it was looking for a successor. Since then, countless cultivators in the primary upper realm scrambled for it. The primary upper realm ushered in its brightest era. Zhou Di, Tsang, Huang Fuju, Senior Yi, and many other outstanding geniuses rose to prominence. Zhou Di and Huang Fuju reached the peak ruler realm and killed heaven venerates to become authorities. They set up the godly tablet of the immortals, which eventually led to the 10 immortals today. At that time, countless great powers and celestial venerables believed that the 10 immortals would definitely become the new generation of giants. Unfortunately, the ancient war broke out before the 10 immortals could rise to prominence. With Xiang Zun's talents, he could easily become the 5th supreme heavenly venerate. Zhou Xuandao's voice was filled with pity. "I've always heard that the 10 immortals are carrying a great secret. What's the secret?" Qin Nan sat up straight. "I can't really answer your question, as I wasn't involved in the immortals matter, so I don't know anything about it. Only the 3 of them and the 10 immortals themselves know about it." Yi Zhaoxian shook her head and said, however, after the godly tablet of the immortals experienced a great change, the four of us wanted to explore it further, but for some reason, only Tsang and Zhou Di managed to enter it. It took them half a year to enter the godly tablet of the immortals. What's interesting is that when Tsang and Zhou Di returned, they didn't say a word about what had happened inside. Not long after, Tsang plotted to kill Zhou Xiao and became the Lord of Origin. That was when the Great War broke out. Qin Nan's eyes flickered. Bai Zhongxing once told him that he had a feeling that there was more to the ancient war than met the eye. Now that he thought about what Yi Zhaoxian said, however, I'm afraid we won't be able to find out the secret anytime soon. Qin Nan shook his head. There was no way Tsang would tell him. Zhou Di, the only person who knew the truth, had already reincarnated into his body. Qin Nan, according to what I've sensed, Tsang has already made his move on you. Wu Wang, one of the 3 burial generals under his command, has reincarnated into your friend's body. The woman outside is the reincarnation of his daughter too, right? Yi Zhaoxian asked. Indeed. Qin Nan's heart sank. I used to be very close to Zhou Di and Old Man Zhou. Later on, when I joined forces with Tsang, I felt a little guilty. Take this scroll and open it when the time is right. You'll know how to solve the problem. Yi Zhaoxian took out a faint blue scroll. Cultivator Yi thanks. Qin Nan received the scroll and brought his fists together. Compared to Zhou Di and Huang Fuju, you're a lot more courteous. Yi Zhaoxian rose to her feet and said with a smile, I'm going to cultivate in seclusion to improve my cultivation to the peak ruler realm. By the way, there's one more thing you have to know. The place to become a Heaven Highness will appear on the 1st of next month. It won't take long for the primary upper realm to have a new Heaven Highness. You should be prepared. Qin Nan brought his fists together and said, Thank you, Cultivator Yi. Chapter 2243. What do you think of this Yi Zhaoxian? Zhou Xuandao asked all of a sudden after returning to Qin Nan's body. To be honest, I think he's a good guy. Besides, he did help me. Qin Nan said. He only helped you because we've helped him before. He owes Zhou Di and I a favor. You don't have to worry about it. Besides, he's not a bad guy under normal circumstances. He doesn't compete with others. However, it's different if someone is in his way. What I remember most is that when he was trying to achieve the Heaven Highness realm, he needed a godly object. His tribe needed the object too. Guess what happened in the end? Zhou Xuandao asked calmly. He fell out with him? Qin Nan said after a slight hesitation. Not only did he completely turn hostile, but he also found an opportunity to wipe out the entire race that he belonged to. Men, women, old and young, including his uncles, he didn't spare any of them. Zhou Xuandao said calmly. Killed them all? Qin Nan was astounded. He completely did not expect that Yi Zhaoxian would do such a deranged action. Therefore, regardless of how he treats you, you shouldn't treat him as your own. If he helps you again, you'll owe him a favor. You'll have to find a way to return the favor. Zhou Xuandao exhorted. Senior, I'll keep it in mind. Qin Nan nodded. At that instant, a ripple surged in all directions. The copper mirror is about to be awakened. Qin Nan calmed his thoughts and swiftly turned his head toward the voice. Rings of light surged forward with Empress Feiyue at the center. Empress Feiyue's aura changed rapidly too. It now had a hint of ancient aura. 100 breaths later, her long eyelashes shuddered as her eyes slowly sprang open. Her icy blue eyes were no longer as calm as usual. They were filled with a hint of confusion and pain. The scene just now was like an unparalleled brand that was branded into her soul. Every detail was so clear. In the heavy snow, a delicate little girl raised her head and asked the beautiful woman next to her, Mother, how many times do you think a person will reincarnate in this life? What is the upper limit of the transmigration law of this world? The beautiful woman in the long dress had a gentle look on her face. How much does Nai think it is? The little girl pondered for a moment. I think that a person's life can't be reincarnated forever. There has to be an end. Otherwise, it would be boring to keep awakening the memories of the previous life. At most 13 times. The beautiful woman in the long dress stroked her head. Nai said 13 times, so it's 13 times. The scene changed, and the little girl was in a sea of people. There was a trace of longing and curiosity in her eyes. Mother, when do you think Father will let me cultivate? I also want to fly on my own. The beautiful woman in the long dress expression changed a few times. Finally, she smiled. Soon, very soon. The scene fell into a room. There was an argument. With a slap, a red mark appeared on the little girl's face. The little girl cried and ran everywhere. When she saw the beautiful woman in the long dress, she threw herself into her arms and sobbed. Mother, does Father hate me? Why did Nai ask him? He hit me after a few words. The beautiful woman in the long dress eyes surged with anger. In the end, she revealed a helpless expression and could only smile gently. Nai, don't misunderstand. Nai's talent is too high. Father values you too much, so he's especially careful. Really? Really? In the end, the world shattered and the laws collapsed. Everything was drowned in endless blood and fire. The little girl stared blankly at this terrifying scene. She felt as if the world was about to shatter. In the end, she saw a cold light that crossed the boundless world and pierced towards her. She was terrified. She trembled. She was powerless to resist. At this critical moment, the beautiful woman's long dress tore through the boundless void and arrived. She used everything she had and used her flesh and blood to block this cold light. Blood splattered everywhere. It was exceptionally red. Mother, mother! The little girl broke down and cried loudly. Nai, don't be afraid. Don't cry. Mother will always be by your side. Mother will send you away now. Take this jade scroll well. When you get there, you must cultivate that cultivation technique well. After you finish cultivating that cultivation technique, don't mention anything here anymore. Change your name and live well in the primary upper realm. Pursue the martial path in your heart. You have to promise me that you'll forget everything that happened here. When you comprehend the laws of reincarnation, I'll definitely return to your side. Light erupted and engulfed the little girl. After that, the little girl came to an unfamiliar place. Everything was pitch black. She was alone in a cave. The cold made her shiver. The howls of countless wild beasts terrified her. The only thing that could bring her warmth was the jade scroll that her mother had given her. She struggled to survive. Some time later, her eyes turned dull. She picked up the jade scroll and followed her mother's instructions. She focused on cultivating the cultivation technique. She had grown up all of a sudden. She realized that her mother had been lying to her. Her father did not care about her at all. Her father hated her. The people that were close to her were all lying to her too. She realized that her mother was never coming back. That night, the rain was pouring heavily. The murderous intent suddenly came. Her skinny shoulders were unable to resist it. She passed away. Empress Feiyue was startled. She felt 2 streams of warmth on her face. She reached out her hand and touched them. She had no idea when she started tearing up. She had cried because of the pain in her life, but she had never shed tears on her own. Copper mirror, how is it? Qin Nan's figure went up to her with a flicker and blurted out. Empress Feiyue subconsciously unleashed the force in her body to conceal the tears on her face. She felt a lot calmer when she saw the worried look in Qin Nan's eyes. Qin Nan, it's true that I've awakened the memories of Tsangji's daughter. Besides, her memories aren't ordinary. I was trying to stay calm and watch from the side, but I was still affected in the end. Empress Feiyue said after taking a deep breath. It's fine, you're doing a lot better than me. Qin Nan said with a smile. Look at me, I've awakened the memories of 2 past lives, and they're both Supreme Highnesses. Even now, I still don't dare to merge with Huang Fuju's flesh. I'm afraid that I'll split into 2. Empress Feiyue looked at him. She knew that the man who was not good with words was trying to come up with something interesting to ease her mind. Chapter 2244. The storm finally came to an end. Song and Yi Zhaoxian had returned to the 9 heavens. Qin Nan was the reincarnation of Zhou Di and Huang Fuju. The news spread across the 9 heavens immortal realm like a great calamity. The cultivators below the peerless ruler realm finally realized that there were rulers of Tao, Heaven Highness, and Supreme Highness above the Master Realm in the 9 heavens immortal realm. Many rogue cultivators initially assumed the Master Realm was the strongest cultivator in the 9 heavens and earth. Meanwhile, the impact of the storm on the disciples of the Supreme Taoism factions, the ancient tribes, the 7 Heaven Highness clans, and other factions was the greatest. The rulers of the 9 heavens immortal realms immediately gave out orders to reveal everything as long as they did not break the immortal demon oaths and the master oaths they had sworn. For a time, the disciples of the various factions were all shocked. They finally realized how magnificent the 9 heavens immortal realm was. They could vaguely sense that a new order was being established. The era that had been in decline for tens of thousands of years had finally sprouted a new sprout. Many people's hearts began to race. It meant they had more chances to alter their destinies. It meant the dreams they had in the past would come true one day. Meanwhile, in a mysterious place, the undying cycle mountain Su Ruochen, Elder Long, the Masters of Tao, and the 9 Heavens Supremes were training in the 2nd and 3rd layers of the mountain to improve their cultivation. Looking from afar, the atmosphere was flourishing and thriving. In addition to it, a few hundred palaces had been built in the 1st layer of the mountain. Shops of various sizes were open for business. The place was bustling with people. Most of the cultivators in the palaces had yet to achieve the peerless ruler realm. They were only allowed to come here because they had a close relationship with the Masters of Tao and the 9 Heavens Supremes. For many experts, their loved ones, children, and so on were their greatest fetters. In order to solve their worries, and to guard against the evil schemes of their enemies, they were all brought over. They were given the greatest protection and a certain amount of resources. However, as long as there were people, there would be conflict. After experiencing many things, the more mature adults would still pay attention to propriety. However, many children who had been pampered since young would become arrogant and despotic. In just a year, these prodigal sons had established the Royal Alliance and the Great Feather Sect. The leader of the Royal Alliance was Zhang Tianyi. He was the great-grandson of Mingchu's ancestor. He had just turned 17 years old. The rest of the members were the authorities of the Sky Taihuang sect and the grandchildren of the 9 Heavens Supremes. The leader of the Great Feather sect was Yang Fanglong. He was the great-grandson of the Green Jade ruler and was 15 years old. His disciples were the descendants of the Taiqing Ancient Sect and the Heaven Illusionary Ancestor Sect. Zhang Tianyi and Yang Fanglong viewed each other as great enemies. They would often fight and stir up all kinds of trouble, wanting to take the other under their wing. It was just that for so long, both sides had wins and losses, and neither side was convinced. However, today was a little unusual. In a mountain valley, Zhang Tianyi and Yang Fanglong led a majestic group of men and horses as they walked through the air. These 2 mortal enemies did not fight when they met. Instead, they nodded at each other with cold faces and sat on the jade chairs that were taken out by the younger brother. One drank tea and the other drank wine. They did not say a word, and they imitated their respective grandfather's manner, imposing without being angry. 2 bosses, those 2 little bastards are here. A young man yelled. Humph. Today, I want to see what kind of person dares to repeatedly beat up my people and peep at my concubine. Zhang Tianyi harumphed coldly. His aura skyrocketed. He had already achieved the Earth Immortal Realm at such a young age. Yang Fenglong did not speak, but his eyes flickered coldly. He was initially satisfied that the two new guys were able to deal with Zhang Tianyi's men. However, what he didn't expect was that these two little bastards would flirt with his woman in the blink of an eye and even injure his subordinate. He knew that the two assholes were no ordinary people. Otherwise, the 9 Heavens Supremes would not have sided with them. However, even if they were not ordinary people, he and Zhang Tianyi could still deal with them. A few moments later, the group of prodigals saw 2 young men around the age of 10 in long robes swaggering toward them from the distance. The 2 young men were only in the martial ancestor realm, but they did not panic when they saw such a large group of people. Zhang Tianyi raised his eyebrows and said, "You two have been quite fierce lately. You've already turned this place upside down in less than a month. You're even more impressive than I was when I was young." Yang Fenglong calmly asked, "How should I address you?" He could roughly guess their background based on their surnames. The older young man chuckled, "I'm the Great Demon King." The young man beside him scratched his head, "Then I'm the Second Demon King." Zhang Tianyi, Yang Fenglong, the group of prodigals, the Great Demon King rubbed his nose and said, "Did you ask us to come here today because you want us to be your brothers? Let me be frank, we won't accept anyone. It depends on whether you know how to behave yourself." The Second Demon King nodded in agreement. "Big brother is right. I don't mind telling you, the prettier the concubine you're offering, the higher the chance of being chosen." Zhang Tianyi and Yang Fenglong held their breaths as their expressions became unpleasant. These two assholes were too full of themselves. Not only were they going to accept them as their brothers, they were going to offer them as concubines too? You're only in the martial ancestor realm at such a young age, yet you dare to act so scornfully. You won't even know how you're going to die when you're outside. Zhang Tianyi clenched his teeth and said, "I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of your clans today." Following this, a tremendous aura burst out from his body. Yang Fenglong reacted the same way too. "Wait." The Great Demon King suddenly reached out his hand. "Are you afraid now?" Zhang Tianyi wore a cold grin. "Afraid of you? What a joke. Do you know who my father is?" The Great Demon King stood with his hands behind him. He raised his head like a proud rooster. "Humph, I'll scare you to death if I tell you." The Second Demon King followed suit. Chapter 2245. Alliance Leader Zhang, I'll leave the older one to you and the younger one to me. Yang Fenglong rubbed his fists and palms together. Crackling sounds could be heard all over his body. "Wait a moment!" The Great Demon King yelled. "Big brother, we have no choice but to tell you our real names. We have no choice. I believe the 2 mothers won't blame us." The Second Demon King said. Zhang Tianyi and Yang Fenglong exchanged glances with one another. They were no longer in a rush. They were interested to see who the 2 little assholes were. Second brother is right." The Great Demon King nodded. He said proudly, "Wash your ears and listen carefully." The prodigals pricked up their ears. The Great Demon King paused for 2 breaths before he said, "My name is Qin Xiaoyu, and this is my younger brother, Qin Shiyan." Then, the 2 Demon Kings revealed a mocking expression that said, "Are you scared now? Qin Xiaoyu? Qin Shiyan?" Zhang Tianyi, Yang Fenglong, and the rest of the prodigals were dumbfounded. In their memories, there was no expert with the surname Qin at all. The only one they knew of had never married or had children. Could he be the grandson of the masters of Tao from the Tao-seeking land? The same thought crossed Zhang Tianyi, Yang Fenglong, and the others' minds. There was another group of people in the Undying Cycle Mountain apart from the 3 supreme Taoism factions. However, the group was not strong enough. They did not have any rulers of Tao, thus they did not think much of it. Ha ha, I thought you had some background, but it turns out you're just the grandson of a master of Tao. Do you know my great-grandfather is the ancestor of the Sky Taihuang sect, Mingchu? Zhang Tianyi burst out laughing as he collected his thoughts. His eyes were filled with disdain. Yang Fanglong and the others reacted too. They shared the same reaction as Zhang Tianyi. Humph, I bet you still don't understand. My father is Qin Nan. Qin Xiaoyu could not stand it any longer. He had no choice but to reveal his true identity. The smiles on Zhang Tianyi, Yang Fanglong, and the others' faces froze. Ha! What did he say? Qin Nan is his father? I'm dying of laughter. These two little bastards want Qin Nan to be their father. I'm afraid they're crazy. The group of people burst into even louder laughter. Who was Qin Nan? That was the joint reincarnation of two supreme Empyreans. If he were to marry and have children, the scene would be extremely grand, and everyone would know about it. They hadn't even heard of it before, so how could these two little bastards be her? Qin Xiaoyu and Qin Shiyan were stunned. What was wrong with this era? To tell the truth, no one believed him? TSK, the two of you are really bold. You even dare to pretend to be Senior Qin Nan's children. Today, I must break both of your legs as a punishment. Zhang Tianyi had a sinister smile on his face as he walked towards them step by step. Qin Xiaoyu's and Qin Shiyan's expressions immediately collapsed and were filled with worry. They had been fooling around for more than a month. Who would have thought that the truth would actually capsize this time? What could he do now? He had no choice but to ask Grandpa Chang Shao for help. However, if Grandpa Chang Shao were to intervene, the two mothers would surely know what they had done. Miao Miao's mother would be fine, but as for Bailan's mother, however, when their expressions landed in the eyes of Zhang Tianyi, Yang Fanglong and the others, they were undoubtedly afraid. This caused them to feel extremely carefree in their hearts. At that moment, all the prodigal sons could clearly feel two powerful auras descending upon the first mountain pass, causing them to feel a sense of pressure from the bottom of their hearts. Zhang Tianyi, Yang Fanglong, and the rest of the prodigals subconsciously turned around. They immediately saw a man and a woman standing in the air at the edge of their vision. On top of that, several powerful auras soon appeared around them. Zhang Tianyi saw his great-grandfather, the ancestor of the Mingchu sect, while Yang Fanglong saw his great-grandmother, the ruler of the Green Jade, and several reputable authorities had arrived. According to the rumors, Senior Qin Nan's confidants, Princess Miao Miao and Jiang Bailan had arrived too. Senior Qin Nan is back. Is that the woman beside him, the legendary Empress Feiyue? Zhang Tianyi, Yang Fanglong, and the others were astounded. They rarely saw Qin Nan, Empress Feiyue, and the others together. That's father. Qin Xiaoyu and Qin Shiyan were startled, before their eyes flickered with joy. Since they were young, they had been hearing stories about their father. As such, they were full of anticipation and curiosity toward Qin Nan. Father, we're here. Qin Xiaoyu and Qin Shiyan immediately waved their hands and yelled. The two young men completely forgot about recruiting underlings and showing off their strength in front of the crowd. They only wanted to see their father. Are these two assholes out of their minds? Zhang Tianyi, Yang Fanglong, and the others inhaled deeply upon hearing this. These two assholes were still trying to force Senior Qin Nan to be their father. Did they not know how to spell the word death? Qin Nan turned his head around when he heard the noise. His eyes widened. Following a whoosh, his figure vanished into thin air and appeared above Qin Xiaoyu and Qin Shiyan. You too, Qin Nan's hands began to tremble when he saw the faces of the two young men. At that instant, he finally understood the meaning of the phrase blood is thicker than water. Brother Nan, this is Qin Xiaoyu, Sister Miao Miao's son. This is Qin Shiyan. Their names were given to them by their father. Jiang Bailan appeared beside him and said in a gentle tone, "Humph, you two little thieves, aren't you always mischievous? Why are you acting like idiots now? Hurry up and greet your father." Princess Meow Meow went over and knocked their heads. Father! Qin Xiaoyu and Qin Shiyan were not afraid of strangers, as they immediately hugged Qin Nan's legs and yelled, "Ha ha, well done, well done!" Qin Nan fondled their heads and burst out laughing. His laughter echoed in the undying Cycle Mountain like a clap of thunder. The experts who were cultivating in seclusion immediately opened their eyes and scanned the place with their divine sense. It had been a long time since Qin Nan last smiled like this. However, in contrast to Qin Nan, the smiles on the faces of Zhang Tianyi, Yang Fanglong, and the rest of the prodigal sons completely vanished, as their faces turned pale white. Their skinny figures began to tremble in the wind. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.